All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dan Skillet.
Sure, you guys can do the
Let's
intro.
do it all again.
Go for it. Whoever wants to take
Oh no,
take the intro, you can do it. It's cool.
the painful part.
Let's all do it together.
Okay.
We're all together. Come here, bro.
Okay. Welcome everybody to a special Modcast episode for this Christmas. So in this episode, let me list who we have with us today. We have J85 Norway.
Hey guys.
We have Laura.
Hello.
We have Maester Erica. Do we have Maester Erica?
Oh.
We should.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We got Selena.
Hello.
We have Psych.
Hello, hello.
We have Real Deal.
What's up, y'all?
We have Yasul.
Hello.
And we have the wordsmith himself.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, it's quite a full house. There's quite a lot of us this time. I'm glad we could get this many of us together. It's good stuff.
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Really impressed.
Yeah, once upon a time we tried to potentially do this a bit more regularly. Then we realized how difficult a task that would be with all of the time zones and how busy everyone is. So, but it had been such a long time. We thought let's put together one for the community because it has been quite a long time. So I think before we actually get into the general pre-planned topics, I think because it has been a long time, this year we had a massive milestone for the stream as we hit 5 years of streaming nonstop. So does anyone want to kind of share any thoughts about that or talk about that for a bit?
5 years and my voice cracked in the video.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like I just stumbled across the video, I watched your Final Fantasy X walkthrough, and then I saw that it was streaming 24/7. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And now I would have never guessed it would have kept running for 5 years, but it's awesome that the community is like almost 100% reason why it's still running because it's just so awesome. So I'm glad it's still here and kicking, and we're still having fun.
Yeah. It was like a
It's weird to
happy
think that it's
accident
become.
when we came across the stream first of all. Well, me in particular, when it first started as just the 10 only stream. I thought, oh, I like Final Fantasy 10, this is nice. And then it just sort of snowballed from there and here we are.
It's kind of weird that it's become such a everyday part of my life. It's odd to think that it's become a very much a regular thing where I like check Discord. I'm like kind of hovering around in the stream every so often, and I can't remember a time where I wasn't kind of like checking on or actively thinking about it. Like not actively
Yeah.
thinking about it for a while. It's weird.
We've just got Berg's voice in our ears at all times of the day.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Although it's bad when I start picking up his like verbal tics or whatever.
No, you start picking up his accent.
Or just narrates my dreams at this point.
Yeah. How do I get that? Rel, tell me your secrets.
Come here, bro.
Oh, I'm here, bro.
It's actually a plugin you can get.
I think it's also special that we've had the opportunity to be able to meet some of each other.
Yeah,
know.
that did happen this year.
Yeah.
It sure did.
So for people who don't know, Real and Wordsmith and myself all got to meet up this past, it was end of September, so that was really special. And I believe that Real is going to the UK to go watch the Phillies, but also hopefully see some of the mods over there too. So it's cool that, we've been a community for 5 years, but now we always, at first we said Discord was going to be strictly business, and we all know how that went. And now,
Yeah, that lasted 2 days.
Yeah, and now it's really special to see us connecting and becoming really good friends, and seeing people get married and have kids, and it's something special to be a part of.
Yeah, we're waiting on the invite to come to your wedding, Erica.
It's fun to be able to say, hey, I have friends all across the world.
Yes.
Well, it's more than just fun. I've gotten to know so much more about different people and cultures. Like, seriously, I know so much more now from knowing you guys from all around the world than I would have if I didn't. Like, just decide randomly one day to click on the stream and just start chatting in there and be like, what's this? Goofy little Final Fantasy.
It's just live.
I'm just wondering, how long can you keep this up for 24 hours a day?
Yeah, that's the magic question.
At least 5 years.
I think we need to let him out of the basement at some point.
But who's on bucket duty now?
Yeah.
Can't give away the secrets, guys. They should never know. But I think sorry, go on, yes.
Like, yeah, so like especially when it was just 10, and it was like, how long can you tolerate watching just 10 over and over and over and over and over again without stop? And so when we started adding the extra other games, it started to make a lot more sense. And over the years, you could watch all of the games being played, like as the walkthrough came out, and then putting it on the stream and watching it get longer and longer.
Yeah, it really turned into like a big archive, considering how few of them there were when we first started in 2008. I think it was like, what was it, like 8 to 15?
I think it was 8.
I think it was
I
8,
wanna
8
say it
to
was 8.
15. Yeah, 8 to 15. And so we've come a long way. And well, the full set by 2024, hopefully, like the full set will finally be there.
Yeah, not too long ago now we have the randomizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need a randomizer.
Yeah, and I mean, how long can FF1 really be? Like 2 episodes? Like, get real. Like, we're gonna have that done by January.
Maybe by the 10-year, we'll just randomize episodes. Like, we're not going to do random episodes. We're gonna random.
Oh my god.
Final Fantasy
God,
7
something-
episode 60, and then it's going to go to Final Fantasy 2 episode 3. And
That'll be
Yeah, we.
Oh my god.
That would actually be quite fun to do for April 1st. Just have that randomized episodes
Yeah,
instead
okay.
of.
That would be.
Yes.
Fun.
Yep.
Cut that out. Cut that out. The Modcast.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know.
I
Don't
think,
let him know.
yeah, I think me and Real gotta get to work on that. We'll do that for April Fools. And then just watch the chat. Everyone be like, "What's going on?" Everyone just panicking. Like, "Oh my god, did it just skip to the?" Just constantly over and over again. It's like, and then we'll just lie and say, like, "No, it looks fine
Is this
to
live?
us."
that's fine.
They
Yeah.
start tweeting you.
Yeah.
Are you live switching from Final Fantasy X to Final Fantasy?
Yeah. All us mods are like, "Yeah, what are you talking about? It's working for me."
Yeah, it's perfectly
problem.
fine.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no issue at all.
I think, especially at this
We've
stage,
been playing 10 this whole time.
I think at this stage, especially since it has been so long, obviously, the question is like, how has it gone on this long, and why? Like, because in theory, it's one of those things where even after I added the other Final Fantasies, in my head I was always like, if I think 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, this Final Fantasy would have looped on here X amount of times. I'm like, there's just no way people are just going to continue to watch this. Like, there's just not enough new, fresh content appearing on here for this format to work. And 5 years later, still we're getting like really solid numbers, and people are still engaging in it. So what is the secret? I mean, why are you guys still here? That's a question.
Got no better to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I walked
mean-
in. No one ever told me where the exit was, so I just stayed.
There was
Yeah,
just,
you
like,
you
had an early
Discord.
access, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, early access. She got the beta. Mod beta.
You have the
That's
preliminary
how it
showing.
happened. We don't
Oh.
talk about that cursed period of time.
That was fun. Nah, the reason I'm still here is the people. Like, you guys, the chatters in the stream, just I like talking to people about Final Fantasy, and
It's the same for all of us. That's the overarching reason why we're all still here, is because over these last 5 years we've made some like genuine solid friendships that I don't want to see fall by the wayside. And you know,
Yeah.
if that means I have to hang around a nerd stream all day and be my big nerdy self, then I will.
I mean, I can't remember. I think there's a saying for this, but it's like that realization that you get when you realize that, like, oh, someone walking on the street or someone that you pass has a life and like a personality as complex and interesting as your own. And I feel like, I think when at least for me, when I started coming onto the stream, it felt just kind of like, passersby that had a common interest, but, I was just kind of passing them on the street. And then as it got more and more invested and I was checking it more often and I was like keeping up with people's lives, I was like, wow, this is actually a really cool, like, pulse check on, you know, people in general that I frequently see. And it's really nice to just stick around and like keep track of those people. It's like really cool.
And to go along with that, we talk about so much more than just Final Fantasy. When people come in, we've built very
Food.
personal food. We've built personal relationships with people. They ask how we're doing in our personal lives and vice versa because, somebody says something in passing and, we ask each other about our holidays and vacations and things like that. And I think that is what makes it special and doesn't make it feel so robotic and people are just here for Burke's great content. Not biased. But we genuinely care about each other, and that's special too.
And we made the chat this like safe place to be and just to throw out, hey, what I was having this kind of day. How was everybody else doing?
Yeah, like it definitely, like if you go to a lot of other streamers, like if you go to some big names, like well they might have a lot more people, but it's like there's no cohesion to a lot of other chats. It's all just people just like spamming stuff or just like, hey, what, just making comments, but there's no conversation going.
Notice
Yeah.
me.
But in the stream, like I see conversations happening. I see people talking to each other and having, like, they're talking about what's on the stream or what the game or what else they're playing or food. But there's some cohesion to that chat. Like you don't see that in a lot of other places. It's all just everywhere else is just like throwing stuff against the wall. But I
Yeah.
think we have that actual, you can actually be here and have nice conversations with everybody else who's in there. So that's why I stuck around, and I think that's why I kind of globbed onto it.
Yeah, I think that's also partly YouTube versus Twitch, where like big streamers on YouTube, it gets to the point where it's the same thing, where it's just people spamming. But the culture is a little bit different, where like you go into a Twitch chat and pretty much almost no matter the size, it's just gonna be spam, emote spam.
Mm-hmm.
But on YouTube, the culture is a little bit different, where people will at least try to talk to each other in a chat.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get a small one where you can actually keep up with it, you can get some decent conversation. It's nice.
Yeah, that's actually so
It's all
true.
the difference between the pre-recorded ones and the the fully live ones. Because if
That's
it's a
also
fully
true.
live, if it's a fully live person, the reason people are spamming is because they want the person to notice them. Like,
Mhm.
oh, shout me out.
Yeah.
Respond to this. And it's like, once we get past the is this live, you're able to say, no, the chat is a place where we just hang out and talk, and then maybe you'll have the stream in the background as like, something to go off of, like, oh, this just happened.
Mhm.
Want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when's that gonna happen? We still get people donating, trying to get Kirk to recognize them.
It's like the Kool-Aid man kicking the door down.
Oh yeah.
He's consistent though. That's important.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's generally a good summary, I think. And it always comes back to what I've said. I mean, it's literally, we called it like a community stream. And I think it's really lived up to that because, I mean, we've seen other streams come and go and they've not been able to achieve what this stream has achieved. And I still think that the primary reason for that has to be the community and obviously the mod team, because, I mean, theoretically, you could mod the stream by having, let's say, just 2 or 3 very dedicated mods that are there all the time kind of thing. But I think it's much harder to build a community with that few mods because, like, obviously you guys, because there's so many of you, collectively you can bring a lot more to the table. As like individuals, you've got your own personalities, you're from different places in the world, you've got different insights, different ideas, so you add a lot more flavor to the stream community as well. So at first I was like, should I have this many mods? It seems a bit weird to have like nearly 15 mods, but obviously when you consider it is a 24/7 stream, and obviously we try to cover as much of it as we can, and the vision that I had for the community, I think it's still I still don't think there's many spaces like it on YouTube. There's a lot of streams, a lot of 24/7 streams out there, but I just don't see what I see in R1 like long term on that particular stream. So yeah, just kudos to you guys and to everyone that's still there.
I think
Mhm.
Aw. I think too, Burke, you had your first, well, like we had talked about like the live streams and everything like that, and you've had live streams in the past, but this was like it was starting a new kind of like challenge and everything like that, and the community really showed out. I mean, a lot of the mods, were there, but I mean, a lot of the community members were there too, and I think that just goes to show, how strong the Dance Go 8 community is as a whole. And it's really cool to see, whether it's live or live, people want to see the content.
The quote unquote live.
Yeah, it's still funny that when it comes to the whole people like watching it in the background and sleeping to it thing, it's something I've really noticed a lot, especially in the past year or so. Like I can palpably see a shift between numbers depending on when people are sleeping versus when it's not. And it's not what you think it is. The stream gets more views usually when people are asleep than when they're awake. And it's really weird because like I'll wake up sometimes and it'll be like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning in the UK. And so it's like, I don't know, 2 a.m. in the US. And you'd think like most people should be asleep because the majority of the viewership is either from the US or from the UK. And so it should be some of the worst times, like very early in the morning. People are either asleep or they're sort of getting ready for work or whatever it might be. So the numbers should be tanking.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost
Mhm.
always when the numbers are really good. And I think a lot of people, they literally just put it on before bed and they have it on overnight. And then literally you watch the numbers decline between like, say, 10, 11 a.m. till about 2 p.m. You watch this steady decline as people start getting up and starting their day. And so they turn the stream off and they start to go to work or they do their own thing or whatever. And it's really funny. Like you can literally see there's like 100 people in the stream, but the chat's completely dead. And you're like, why is this? And it's because basically everyone's asleep. So it's really weird. I don't think there's many streams like it. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
That is me. I am guilty of doing that.
That's actually so cool. We've actually just like hit a critical mass of 10K like views. We just like haven't noticed it because everybody's just sleeping at the same time.
Because
on the screen.
everyone's asleep.
I can't watch it
Yeah.
while I sleep anymore. We all know
It's
what
your voice,
happens when
man.
I do
It's
that.
too soothing.
Tyler. Yeah. I used to fall asleep to it, but like I would fall asleep chatting. Like I would just be chatting all night till like 2, 3 a.m. and then I'd pass out. And it would be so funny because that first year I was so addicted to like going on the stream and
Yeah.
talking in there that I would have dreams where I was like chatting and like people would say stuff and I'd wake up and be like, oh, that never happened.
Does that weird you out or anything and all that people use your voice to sleep?
Ooh, good question.
I think it's been too long for me to be weirded out now. Obviously, when I first started hearing it, I was like, that's strange. Like, why?
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those things. If you don't do it yourself, I've never been the kind of person that falls asleep to like TV sounds or to music, or I just try to sleep, and so like that's already a bit weird for me. But I've got used to it. It is what it is. It's not like as a result people don't actually care about the content. Obviously, people respond well to the
Yeah, you're
content
not
itself
putting
too.
people to sleep because
Y-
you're not putting people to sleep because you're bad. I promise you.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. So I don't mind it. I mean, it's if that's what people do, that's what they do. It is what it is. It helps. It also helps the stream stay afloat. So sure, I'll take that.
And I think I mentioned this in one of the others, but it's also that you're not like a loud screaming like YouTuber just going, oh my gosh, and reacting to everything. So it's like you can just fall asleep to like relaxing, playing a game that you're having fun with.
Mhm.
If I ever
It's
come
like
visit,
audiobooks back.
I think the community chat as well is sort of like this nice little safe space for some people. I'd like to believe so at least.
Yeah, I think from what you had mentioned, like just about like it being a safe space, I also pretty genuinely believe that because I mean, I don't know if this sounds rude or not, but I feel like having a stream just completely dedicated to like replaying Final Fantasies in general is not like, it's not spicy content in any way. It's like, it's very, I don't know, nice and calming and a little mundane. And it's like, if you go in there and you go into that chat, it's like, you know, some people are talking about Final Fantasy, some people are talking about other things. You can't stay on one topic for too long. And if you just like jump in and you have a conversation, you're gonna get a lot of people like to bounce off of and everything as well. So it's pretty comforting in that way. And I like the conversation most of the time doesn't ever get too aggressive because the baseline theme here is that we all like Final Fantasy and we're all like not that I don't know, we're just all not that intense people, so I feel like the conversation is just nice in there.
Yeah, and the fact that it's continuously always there. It's almost like this constant in life that you can sort of count on always being there, essentially.
Yeah.
That's so wholesome.
Yeah, I mean,
this is getting a little too wholesome. Let's do a viewer of the
Too
month tier
wholesome
list
for me.
right now. Let's throw down.
yeah, it is actually viewer of the month time. After Modcast, everyone needs to send me their votes.
Man, we
Oh,
should
yeah.
have
We do need to
had
do
a
that.
live voting.
I need to pull
Live
up
Like
this.
Survivor.
Oh my god.
The tribe
And maybe
has
a live
spoken.
ban to an execution.
Let me pull out my like shit list of like on the,
I'm gonna keep voting
on the
for
screen.
someone until they win because I have seen them. I know y'all have seen them. You're going to vote for him 1 month. I swear.
Alright. Pulling up the stream right now. Let's see who's in there. Who's winning?
But I would say in general, from like the environment side and like the actual modding side, honestly I think it's easier than it's ever been. There's so much less to actually mod now. Like I think most of us remember what it was like between say 2018 to 2021.
Yes.
It was a whole different beast. Like modding in there, it was like an everyday thing. Like there was always something to be modded there every single day, and like people to be banned and this happening, that happening. But I think it
Bots.
really
Bots,
it really hit its stride, and it's not the case that the reason it's like that is because there's so few people now. Like numbers wise, the average numbers, they're not. I don't think they're all that different to what it was like in say 2019 before like the pandemic kind of spike happened. And we did get a lot more people, that's fair. But in 2019, we still had a lot more modding to do, even though we had very comparable numbers to what we do now. So I think, again, that's got to be just, people just get it. It's been around for so long. And I think we've all been consistent in how we've tried to mod the stream and the environment we've tried to create in there. So I think people just fundamentally get what kind of vibe it should be in there. And to some extent, it mods itself. Obviously, we always try to be there and, lurk and intervene when we have to, but honestly, like
I'm always watching.
Yeah, and I think honestly,
do you miss it? Do you miss it from when it was like more spicy and there were things to mod every day?
The tea.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I do miss that a little bit. There's no lie. Like I miss that a little bit, but again, going back to the question of why are we all still here, I think we probably could have. I think we would have burned out a lot more. Like that constant, like
sure.
it's fun, like in short bursts, like to have a bit of drama. And like a bit of gossip, bit of tea, all that stuff. I do like it in short bursts, but when it becomes like the norm and you're just dealing with that every day, and it's been like 4 years, 5 years, it's very understandable to just say, you know what, I can't, I don't want to spend time doing this stuff anymore. So I think part of the reason we can all stick around is because we're less likely to have a negative experience in there, and just So I overall I think it's a good thing that it's not as spicy as it used to be.
I don't know if it's not a coincidence that shortly after me and Sal and Jay became moderators that things were kind of locked down a little bit more.
Okay.
Oh, remember the old days when it was just like, I'm going to sleep now. Can somebody please watch the chat for me? And then every time it went down, we're just like, Densko 8 Rel, somebody help me! It's crashing. What do I do?
Yeah, it was because if you didn't get someone to watch the chat for you, some crazy shit would always happen. Someone would throw down in chat.
There's just like a couple of moments where like you can see repeated people coming in. They're a little chaotic, but they're not doing anything wrong. And you're like, something's gonna go bad if I look away
You can
for
just
like an
tell with some
hour.
people. You can just tell. You just
Yeah.
know.
You can
There's
smell it.
there's like a tone in their words.
You're just
Yeah, that's it. That's
lifting
exactly
the
it.
band hammer,
It's like you
waiting to
could-
drop it.
You could like see their pupils shaking, and you're like, you're gonna do something.
I think too, we've all grown together as mods and people, and we learned like some mannerisms that we all have, and each of us mods differently, and that was a learning curve for all of us. And I think that helped make it a little bit easier to kind of manage the moderating side, on top of it becoming easier to do as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I say, I still think that reflects in the community as well. I mean, a lot of the people that are regularly there, they've kind of over time, like people who've been in the chat for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, they're so kind of locked down in terms of what kind of thing we're going for in there. They're like moderators themselves in the sense that they know what needs to be done, and like they don't need a rule book. They've kind of figured it out and stuff, and so I think that really helps those regulars that are there most days to keep things locked down. I think it's definitely been good.
Yeah, it is
The
kind of
mini
cute though when
mods.
someone comes in causing trouble and those regulars like, you don't do that.
This isn't the vibe.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know about you guys, but I reference the moderator rules for every comment that gets posted in the stream. I go through the rules that we have listed and cross-reference it to each chat, determine whether or not I removed it or banned somebody.
He has a
Pull up,
spreadsheet.
hey, according to Section 3, Article 4, get the fuck out.
You have been
And I'm
banned
just like,
because of
insta-ban. ...
Thou shalt not F-bomb.
So I think for the curious, wondering about what is mod rules here? Like, do you guys literally have like a rule book about like what you do and stuff? And well, I think honestly there hasn't been what happened. I think early on there were no like formal rules. Obviously, a lot of it was just figuring out on the fly. None of us had moderated anything before, and we were all just trying to figure it out and just be like, okay, what should we do? What should we not do? And especially at the start, it was very overwhelming because there's just so many people from so many different backgrounds, so many different ways of communicating, so many possibilities that like you think you have everything covered, and then someone will say something or a topic will come up, and you don't know how to handle that. And you don't know where it fits within like your quote unquote rules, and you're like, oh, so what should we do with this scenario? And that just kept happening over and over again, like over the first few years. And every time it happens, it's like, okay, we've got to decide. So what do we do? Does this align with the other stuff we're doing? And I think eventually, after maybe like 2 years or something, 2-3 years, I kind of decided to just basically collect everything that we've experienced into like one document to say, okay, like we've encountered if this scenario happens, this scenario, and try to cover as much of the general things that we would encounter in chat. And so we do have like one document that generally gives an overview. And the reason I made that as well was just because I definitely wanted every mod to make sure they're on the same page, because one of the most difficult things, like Erica said earlier, is because obviously every mod is their own person. This isn't some big formal professional organization where everyone has a very rigid way you have to do things, etc. One of the problems obviously is sometimes if one mod does something one way, the chat thinks it's okay to do X thing, and then another moderator will come in and just get angry and just ban someone for it, and then you're like, yeah, but this mod said it was okay. So I didn't want to have situations where mods were kind of basically at odds with each other. And so we needed just like some kind of guidelines for everybody to kind of work off of. And I think once we were all on the same page, it was just like, do we all agree with everything we've said here? And since then, I think it's probably been a good 2-3 years since that document was written. And since then, there's not been any kind of additions to it. And now and then things pop up, like small things, but we just kind of discuss it in the moment. And because we all know each other so well now, we pretty much always find the right answer between us, and we just keep rolling. So for everyone curious about the rules, yes, there is like a document with rules on it, but it's not something I've made public because it just makes it seem more serious than it is. Like if people read that rule set, they think, oh my god, they take this way too seriously. But it was literally like 2 or 3 years worth of experience that I just wanted to consolidate into one document, so we just kind of had an idea of what to do. So I think by and large, it's just so much of it is just common sense, and the very short thing that Nightbot says, like there's not that much magic to it, and so yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be made public, but that's the rules if anyone's curious.
So make sure you follow them, or else.
Now, a lot of it was made from the early days. Like, oh, we see an example of something that, how do we feel about this? And then maybe some people aren't on at the time. They didn't see when that person started a debate about this, or when this person started talking about this. And so having it like written down where we can say, oh, you were asleep at this point, but how do you feel about this or this and this? And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that gets really referred to. I mean, I can't remember the last time we specifically referred to the rules. It's just like we all just generally know what we're doing and how it all fits in. So I think the final thing, so that we have time to move on to other topics and stuff, is just a quick shout out to the Ben Starr appearance on the stream, which will be a little segue into Final Fantasy 16. So
Thanks, Ben.
yeah,
We love you.
that was a lot of fun.
That was awesome, man.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool that we can have these like little events that happen on the stream. It shows how much of a community it really is, and how much gravitas it. I mean, we had 2 people show up for it now, and it was awesome to see them there. Like I got mad that I had to like drop Violet off at daycare at the beginning of it. It's like, no, I was like rushing home and running through red lights and everything. I gotta see Ben Starr.
We started our little Final Fantasy stream. Like, what the shit? How did that
Yeah,
happen?
just one little channel who like loves Final Fantasy and made this thing, and now it feels like it's recognized. Like, oh yeah, this is a place where you go for Final Fantasy stuff.
Yep.
The little
And-
channel that could.
While we're still kind of like on the meta topics of like the stream and stuff, I just want to say, like, thank you to all the people who tune into the Modcast itself. Because, like, we get, like, maybe a few thousand people who listen to each one. But that's just so cool to me. Because, like, probably 90% of them just want to, like, hear more content from Bert. But, like, the other ones who are left over who just genuinely want to listen to us, like, banter and enjoy that, that's just so cool to me. That there's people out there who actually want to listen to that. You guys are the best.
That's sweet. That's why I did want to do more of them. Like logistically, if it was easier to do more of these, I really would have liked to have done it. But even like pulling this one together, it's very difficult. And but yeah, we'll definitely do more of them in the future. But in terms of it becoming a regular thing, it's still like it's not going to become like a regular feature or anything. But I think it's definitely nice to do
They're
these from time
special.
to time. I definitely
It's a
want to keep going.
holiday gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Aw.
Okay.
Ho ho ho.
I think let's start moving on to some more like, what's going on in the gaming world, Final Fantasy world, all of that kind of stuff. And so obviously the most significant Final Fantasy thing in 2023 was Final Fantasy 16. So where do we even start here? Do we want to start with just like a very brief overview of what everyone kind of who played it made of the game, or like who watched it or experienced it? Should we start there, or?
Yeah, why not?
First things first, the soundtrack absolutely slapped. I love it. I love every part of it. It's the best part of the game.
Mm.
Yeah, for me at least, it's just the vast improvement. And I'm sorry, Eric, I know you love Final Fantasy 15, but it's just the vast improvement from Final Fantasy 15 to 16. It's a whole different direction, at least, which was needed for the series. To me, at least, who has been playing it from basically since I was 3 years old. It's just it was dying a bit for me, and it sort of revived the light of the series.
Yeah, I would say I'm very excited for 17.
Yeah, me too.
I
Can
say
someone
it's
remind
definitely
me, was it
heading.
a different team that produced 16 from 15?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember
Yeah, it was
always.
the Final Fantasy 14 team. Creative Business Unit 3.
Yoshi P, we love you.
We love you, Yoshi P.
Send us Dawn Trail.
What I will say actually before we go any further is that I think we should avoid any big spoilers. I think in general we can obviously talk enough about the game to actually have a bit of a conversation, but I think we should try to avoid any major spoilers. I think we all saw from how 16 did on the 24/7 stream that there's a lot of people that's still keeping well away from 16 related stuff. So If you don't want to hear absolutely anything about 16, I'll put timestamps so you can skip ahead, like past this conversation. But we will avoid like any major spoilers, just so you guys know.
One of my favourite things about 16 was how it was like a ye olde English medieval simulator. It was like it was amazing because most of the people in the game sounded like me. I loved it.
I loved the diverse
the
accents,
northern
the
territories in the
culture.
UK. It was so good to just felt like you were represented in, because it's usually like American English, isn't it? And it's all very sort of monotone, and that's why I really liked 10 when I first came across 10. Just to go back to that, because of how different Waka was.
Mm-hmm.
Back to 16, I felt like I was, I should have been a voice actor in 16.
young lady Karen.
Yes.
Yes.
Send them an email. Send them an email, Laura. Do it.
Oh my gosh, for the DLC.
They'll put in the DLC. Let's go.
Other than everybody sounding like they came from Yorkshire or Lancashire, I really enjoyed it. I'm not usually a big fan of, not standing in a nice line to beat people up. So I thought I was going to really struggle with the gameplay side of it, but I actually really enjoyed it. I ended up using like the same few icons, but I still really loved it. So I surprised myself with how much I enjoyed 16. Actually,
hey Laura, can you do me a favor? Or really quick, can you do me a favor? Can you just say dongle for me? just really quick.
Dongle.
Thank you. That's gonna be in the DLC. Just pay attention, guys. Sorry,
okay, so speaking of the icons, all right, of the people who played the game, which icons were we using? Which ones were we abusing?
Bahamut.
Who used what?
Titan.
Odin, Shiva. Once I learned how she worked.
I love Titan. The skills of Titan, not the shield.
Yeah, Titan was awesome.
I never used Titan. I used Titan in, like, they released, like, the early version or whatever. Like, some things may change. But it was, like, Kyr Norvent. It was the first thing. And they gave you Titan. And it's not how it plays in the game, obviously. They warned you. It won't always be how you play in the game. But I enjoyed Titan when he was my only option. Sorry, Sid. More than Rama. I will use Judgment Bolt, but I don't like the shot lock, whatever that ability is. I never used it.
I did use Ramu for a bit, but my like ending team ended up being Bahamut, Odin, and Garuda, actually.
The Garuda was good for staggering as well.
My team was Phoenix and Bahamut, but I would use Judgment Bolt. Judgment Bolt was such a cool move, and like I had to give Sid some representation. It's like, no, I have to put some Ramu in my set because
I think
that man's
everyone
too cool.
uses Ramu. The skills are just too good.
I gotta like pay him some respect. And then I use Shiva because that dash was so satisfying. Like once you get into the flow of the Shiva dash, oh my gosh.
When I learned she could do that, I was like, okay, maybe she's a little useful. Okay,
yeah,
I admit.
Even bosses, it's like, okay.
Yo,
both
definitely.
Shiva and Odin as well was so overpowered once you managed to figure out how to use them.
And Mega Flare, like, it carried me through the second parts of the game because, like, yes.
I kept Phoenix the whole game because I liked that its move where it regained some health because I had a whole system of how I did my battles of trying to stagger, and then I would just spam all my icon abilities, including and ended off with that Phoenix ability, which would guarantee me all the health back that I tanked through.
Yeah, I mean,
but the weird thing is that like the health has how much you can regenerate, and then it has like actually how much health you've lost. And so I was just like, if I can't regenerate all of my health potentially with Phoenix, then why would I use that ability and not potions? Because you get plenty of potions in the game.
Yeah, you
I
do.
was so miffed there was no cure mechanic. Despite at the start, Joshua had it, and then it disappeared. Not you, Josh. I mean, Joshua in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cure me, goddammit.
Yeah.
He had just had Kiraga as a kid.
That's why the toggle heal thing was so funny. It was like, it's like heal me, boy, or whatever he shouts. It's like 2 HP back. So okay, thanks.
Yeah. That was such a
And
tease.
sometimes he
It
gives
was
you a
so
little
bad.
regen that
And
you
he
kinda
has his own
notice.
interface
Yeah.
for some reason.
Yeah, you might
Yeah,
as well
no, I
auto
never
battle
controlled
Torgal.
Torgal.
Yeah.
Can we have how useful / useless Toggle was as a hot take a bit later on?
Sure. Yeah. But first, I want to hear Jay's like overall opinion of the game, and then Reel's as well. And then I've got a question for Selena as well.
Oh,
Yeah, I
So
thought
Jay first, what did you make
Yeah.
overall of the game?
it's been a while since I've played it now, so I can't remember the details that much. But I remember after playing 15, I had one main criteria for the next game, and it was that it has to be a complete story, and it was. So it had 5 out of 10 already just there. But no, but I thought overall I thought it was a really good game. I enjoyed playing it. All the nods to some of the earlier games as well. The voice acting was really well made. The icon battles I really enjoyed. A few of them I thought were a tiny bit drawn out and everything, but I think if I'm going to score it, I think between 8.5, I think out of 10 is what I ended up with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's come to Mr. Hot Take himself, Real Deal.
Oh, he's rolling up his sleeves right now.
Oh,
Oh,
let's go.
He's been prepping for weeks for this.
He's got another
I have
spreadsheet.
so much. Yeah, right. I say this. I'm prefacing this that I am a relatively newer father. I don't have as much time to do a lot of gaming anymore. I have an hour here and there before I go pick my daughter up, and then I have like a couple hours after she goes to sleep. And that made playing this game very difficult because it made things a bit of a slog at some points, especially the side questing, because I would want to go through the story. The story overall wasn't too bad, at least initially. I, I would go through part of the story, and then the completionist to me is like, I got to do everything in this. If there's a marker that says there's a side quest, I gotta go check it out because who knows? There's gonna be like a better weapon I can use down the road. It's gonna give me something I can use. Okay, well, let's see, I have 20 minutes left. Let's see what I can do. Let's go talk to the person. Okay, this person's talking for like, something useless for about 6-7 minutes. Okay, that cut in some time here. Okay, now I gotta go travel. I gotta go figure out like where I gotta go for where that person wanted me to go to. Um, and then figure out, it like side questing I think my biggest gripe is the side questing, but the side questing I'd give that like a 2 out of 10, especially compared to I think The Witcher 3 was probably the best side questing I've ever I compared to that, just because The Witcher 3 I think did it so well. So when I see games like Final Fantasy 16 do it so poorly, it makes me so mad because I was just not interested in them. There's a point in the game where it kind of actually has some meaning to it, but even by then, minor spoiler, but there's so many of them at that time. Like, and we got all the way
Yes.
up, and it's like, woof, like here's all this crap you can do, and I'm like, cool. I just kind of want to finish the game, see what happens.
Mhm.
But I have to check all these ticks off and do that, and that really frustrated me because I think it took me like 4 hours, I think, just to go through the last set of side questing, which took me a week. Like, that's like that's the gripe I have with, and then just like there's the settings like the side characters I really did not care about. I was just bursting through their dialogue because it's like I don't care, like you just want me to do something cool. You're a good
Welcome to how
person,
I play games.
yeah, like it's just like I didn't have any connection. I had a connection to like the Joshua character, Clive, obviously. Even Jill, I did not care for, because it's like they had like one kind of again, minor spoiler. They had one forced scene together that I felt was very forced, and like I didn't feel there was much a connection to them. They were just like, yeah, they're kind of like together-ish maybe, but I don't know. Like, and Sid was obviously, he was definitely the star in terms of like character. He was so cool. I got mad about his character arc, I guess you can say. Not to give any
Mm-hmm.
spoilers. Um, like this character quest, like I don't know, they were just kind of like they weren't. The game didn't have a lot of depth to it. Um, it focused a lot on like the combat, which was different. It was like it's nice to see them trying something new. Um, and I think it kind of it did very much hinder from not having it as like a group battle effort. You just had Clive. You had people there with you, but they made like zero difference in the battle. And you just didn't have like one thing about Final Fantasy X is like I can control Waka. And like if I control Titus the whole game, I would not care as much about the other characters. But I like the fact that I can control Waka and I can use his abilities and strategize with him. Like that, you only had that with Clive, and that kind of really put a damper on all the other characters. And I just didn't feel that connection. And then between that and all the slogs of the side questing and just some of the story points just didn't hit that well for me personally. Probably because I was only playing like an hour at a time and it didn't really have like that bigger connection. But there's a lot of things that all those complaints, I give it maybe a 5. Um, like the art direction was great, the music was great as he has said. Some of the characters were fun, but like 20 hours in, like I was just playing it just to get through it and not because I really enjoyed playing it. And so for that, like it didn't have that spark that the other Final Fantasy have for me. It's going in the right direction. It's better than 15. It's going in the right direction. So I do agree with that. But in terms of like how much fun I actually had playing it, not that much. So that's I give it around the 5.
Okay, so anyone want to respond to that?
I can't tell if Josh is giving a massive stink face.
Josh is looking like his emote right now.
I think the main thing I agree with Rel is the side questing aspect, not adding much to anything. Sort of a lot of time it just amounts to nothing. I think a good Final Fantasy game, you can see where the side quests always either give something to the lore or the world building or connections to other things, to other quests. It's Final Fantasy 12. It's like it's the epitome of side questing in the series.
Yep.
So yeah, like Rel said, near it got good near the end, but that doesn't really excuse the other 90%, which are just unfortunately not very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about the character and the party, like my characters are doing things. I can see the enemy health going down more than when I hit them. So, like, yeah, the characters are there, but they're so, like, if you jumped into any random part of the game, how likely are you to realize that you have party members running behind you and actually helping in the battle? Like, and there's no elemental weaknesses, too. Not explicitly. Because there is like, oh, iconic strike, iconic weakness, you hit its weakness, but there was no like scan or Libra or strategizing that you like knew, oh, I'm gonna use Odin because this one is weak against dark magic, or I'm gonna use ice because this one is weak against ice. Like there was none of that. like when you have Joshua in the party, he uses Phoenix Flames like pretty much solely for his magic, right? Oh, but he can light a bomb on fire. and it actually does real damage. Okay. And like for the whole Jill thing, I was so frustrated by this, and the reason I am frustrated by this is because Final Fantasy has had amazing female characters in the past, even if they were deuteragonists, even if they were not the main protagonist, like Yuna was for Titus, like Garnet was for Zidane. Like they're not the main focus, but they have plenty of character, plenty to hold themselves up. And just every other character that was not Clive was just not focused on. And I'm just like, and Jill was there, and she's standing in the background, and she's also there not using her power. Like, this game was really theatrical, but not in a Final Fantasy IX fun way, in a, you guys are just standing there, just waiting for the stage directions. Guys, just, why are you just standing there?
That's why I
And the
was kind
funniest
of
thing,
that's why I was a bit disappointed with the DLC announcements, because on the one hand I'm happy about the Leviathan thing, like the Leviathan the Lost DLC. It's exciting to me, but I think a lot of us agree that one of the criticisms that I had of the game, I said to you guys as well, I'm going to try not to talk too much because obviously I've shared my thoughts so extensively already. I want you guys to kind of take the stage, but when it comes to the DLC and stuff, I was hoping that this would be a chance for certain characters that didn't get the spotlight that they should have got in the main game, like Jill, for example, to kind of have more of a role in the DLC. But the DLC probably still is going to be the Clive show once again. Like the first DLC seems a bit more combat based anyway. It's not too much of a story lore edition kind of thing. And if I had to guess, I'd probably say Leviathan DLC is probably still basically the same as the main game, with Clive leading the way and everyone assisting him and whatever they're going to do. So I would have loved to have seen like maybe a more almost what they did with 15, really, a bit more like other
yeah.
character-centric DLCs. But yeah, that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
And I know that we give 15 flack for all the extra content that they did and all the extra things they had to add on because the game wasn't complete. But like a lot of those things were good. I know Gladio was not that interesting. Prompto was a little, but like when I hit the Arden DLC, I was like, okay, this is actually interesting. This is really elaboration on his character. I am interested in being this character and seeing what he's going through. And when I saw Luna Freya might have gotten a DLC, which she didn't get, but I was interested to actually have more of her. Like, I want that with these characters, but I'm not sure how it would fit in. And I will forever be angry that Dion didn't get to join our party at any time. He's the only friendly icon who never joins our party, and I will riot in the streets. Just
That's
he
true.
better be part of the Leviathan DLC, or I'm just gonna give up.
So I want to give. I'm curious, Selena. Have you watched the game or have you played the game?
I did neither because I'm still flip-flopping between so for everybody listening, I don't have a PS5. So I am still considering doing it, and because 16 was such a departure from it was like the newest Final Fantasy game that was coming out, I was like, "Oh, should I save myself like the content to like play it myself?" And I wasn't really sure. And because I'm indecisive and I don't like making decisions, I still haven't decided if I'm going to pull the trigger or not this season. So I haven't, aside from watching the trailer, I haven't watched any of the content for Final Fantasy 16. I'm not incredibly concerned about spoilers, which is why I'm literally sitting in this conversation right now, listening to everyone right now.
The next
But
spoiler alert.
no, I haven't. To answer your question, no, I haven't watched it or like seen any of the content for it either.
Okay, I think for me it's more of a like, well then, how do you feel about like the general conversation or the narrative around Final Fantasy 16 as someone who hasn't played the game at all? Does like based on what you've been hearing from other people, what you've been seeing online, like how do you feel as a Final Fantasy fan who's kind of outside of the 16 bubble right now?
Oh, how do I feel about it? It's kind of cool. My general impression of it is that it's leaning more into like, let's see, maybe like a more old school kind of take on a story. So something maybe a little closer to the older Final Fantasy games as far as like a plot goes. Not that I know that much about it, but I think it also has a bit more of a focus on. I'm going to assume every time you guys talk about icons, you're talking about summons. So yeah, and
Yes.
how they tie into this, like they're still using this crystal universe, right? Like this is their final time using this
Yeah.
kind of crystal universe, which is why I'm immediately taking an association with like some of the older games, because I think it has a bigger component in the older games, and I think in this one as well. So I quite like that about it. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm holding out to possibly play it on my own, because I don't know. I think I'm just like an old geezer, and I liked a lot of the older games. I still play them a lot, so I feel like I want to experience a fresher take on a story that kind of relates, that kind of like ties itself maybe a little bit to how some of the plot for older games went. Um, and I'm also curious what they did with combat, because it feels um I still like 15's combat. I feel like I'm one of the maybe I'm in the minority for people who like the combat for 15. Um, but I feel like I want to see what they did to change it, and see if I would like it any better. Um, than because I was like I don't know. I feel like after after 12, I started really not enjoying the combat style that they moved towards in Final Fantasy, and it kind of turned me off of playing a lot of the later games. So yeah, I'm curious. But as far as like rumblings go in the Final Fantasy like Twitterverse or like newsroom, I don't know. It like I feel like I'm getting a lukewarm response from the public. Is what I'm getting.
Yeah, a lot of the hype
Am I
around the
right
game
about that?
has died down. No, like people aren't talking about this game much anymore. It is what it is.
Yeah, I'm very surprised about that, because I thought it would at least like cling on to uh like conversation a bit more, considering I don't know, like considering it's a Final Fantasy game.
I think Baldur's Gate just took over.
It did.
Pretty bad.
But
Eh,
yeah, I guess it's time for me to put my thoughts out there.
Yeah, tell me if any of my impressions are wrong or right, because like, you know,
I
again, I
don't think
haven't really been keeping up with anything either.
no, I don't think like any of your impressions are necessarily wrong. Like so for me, Final Fantasy 16 is the most disappointing 8 out of 10 that I've ever played.
That's a good Josh with the clickbait YouTube review
Yeah,
titles.
clickbait
review. So
How?
I have to
Can't believe did
contextualize
you just like
this.
come up with that on the spot? That's incredible.
Yeah, so
That's why he's a wordsmith.
I had to contextualize this with but anyway, so I had to contextualize this with when the demo dropped. Everyone played this demo, and there was so much hype around this demo. And Final Fantasy 16 had probably the greatest demo for any video game ever made. This shit was so hype, and everyone who had a PS5 was like, I'm getting this game. This is going to be the best game ever. And then the game came out, and it was a really good game. But it just couldn't live up to the hype. There was no way it was going to live up to that hype. And so, let me see, just talking about different like points of the game design. Where should I start? Okay,
Wow, so it
so
was really just the expectation of it that
no, it wasn't
that
just
like
the
kind of
expectation, but let me see. So I think with the combat system, the core was there. So I asked earlier what everyone used for icons, and I kind of got the answer I was looking for. Every single one of us who played the game gave a different answer. None of us used the same set of icons, which is great, because that's what they were trying to achieve when they made the game. Of everyone who plays the game have their own experience, their own personal preferences, and you can just beat the game doing what you want to do, being the Clive that you want to be. And that's great, except the combat was so undertuned that you could just kill everything in 1 or 2 tries. And that sucked. It really sucked that everything was easy and all the enemies just felt like damage sponges. And like, as far as characters go, Rel talking, well, who brought up? No, it was I was bringing up Jill and like how disappointing she was. Yeah, Jill is the most disappointing character in the game. You can't do that. Like, I don't want to get into spoilers, but the way they handled her and using her for the same plot point multiple times as just like a device, it felt really bad because she deserved better. And like, her arc ended so early in the game. Her arc ends about the same point in 16 relative to where Vaughn's arc ends in FF12. It's rough. It is rough. It's about like 30-40% through the game. And then like the rest of the game, it's just like done. Her personal arc's done. She exists to be like there for Clive's character for the rest of the game, and it's like, no, please, I want Jill to be relevant again.
Dude, don't get me started on how horrible the romance was just written from a lack of information, because like, okay, just like I'm so frustrated by the only thing that they seem to have in common is the fact that they were childhood friends. And it's like the only thing they relate to. Oh, we went to this place when we were children, remember? Oh, remember when we were kids and we used to do this? Remember when we were kids and we were both happy? Remember when we were kids and we, like, do you have anything to bond over in the present? Because you were kids, like, 20 years ago. Okay?
And so that's another thing about the game. The time skip stuff was just really, really not exactly the best laid out.
Why?
It was
why
not
did
handled
they
well.
have to have such a long time skip though? Like
they didn't need to. It could have been 1 year.
I don't
like,
think it's spoilers
that they
to say that
accomplished...
Clive is as old as Orin is. So like he's in like his 30s, and it's like you didn't need to make him that old.
Yeah.
Hey! Some of us are in our 30s, man.
Oh
What the hell?
I saw everyone. I saw everyone throwing up hands.
It would have been fine for
Jesus.
him to be that old.
I don't mind him being that old, but nothing happened within. If we didn't see his teenage years and all that inciting incident happened in the like his present, or at least like a shorter time skip nearer, then I would have been fine. I don't care about his age much, but I care about the fact that we started so early and we skipped so far ahead, and we just like said, yeah, remember that entire over a decade? We just kind of skipped over that. Don't worry about it. It's okay. All these things have happened. All these people have probably changed, but don't worry about that. No, don't worry about it.
I think
He's old and jaded and brooding now, like I expect of all my Final Fantasy characters.
I think from here, what I want to ask is, Josh, why is it still an 8 out of 10?
Okay, it's because there's so much right with the game. And, like, the story itself. I love the story of 16. I love the direction they took with it. But there's just, like, little things here and there. Like, for me, it was little things. Like, for Rel, it was big things with the way, like, how much of a slog it became. I didn't mind those as much, and it's probably because I have more time to play. But yeah, the story did have like down points, and so that would take like a little bit off here and there. Like the combat being a little too easy took a little bit off here and there. Like the music was great overall, but then even then there's some like sections where it's like some of the like background tracks are just kind of forgettable, like for certain areas, and
So,
like that's
do
just a
you-
little bit off here and there. It's like every single point in the game is just maybe like a quarter of a point off, you know? And
question
so
for you
it's
then,
like,
Josh.
yes.
Oh, sorry. Finish your thought though. I want
Okay.
finish your thought.
And let me see, where was I?
Quarter points off. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, that's what it was. There's basically no post-game content. And like I guess they're making that in the DLCs. It seems like from the trailer. I don't think this is really a spoiler because it's in the trailer. You see Omega in the like new DLC trailer, and then you see Leviathan in the next DLC trailer. And so that's basically going to be the 2 post-game super bosses, I guess. And that's cool. That's great. But we really needed more of that in the main game. Like the Red Dragon was not enough. Like that was one cool boss, but that was the hardest boss in the game when that should have been like a mid-game tough, like, hey, let's go kill this a little bit early boss. But there should have been way cooler stuff after that, and it just wasn't there. But overall, that story, those characters, like Sid, Clive, I say Sid first because, you know, he's him. He's the man.
He was cooler.
Even
Best
guys
character.
like Gav. Gav is just, I have such a soft spot for Gav.
That was
And,
pretty
like,
good. He had the best arc.
Yeah,
He was-
Gav was so good. He's underrated as hell. Like, it's just, I can't not love this game. Because I had fun playing it. Like, yeah, I wish it was harder. But I still had fun playing it. And I loved the story from start to ending. And, like, when I saw the ending, I was like, yes. Because I felt like they stuck the landing on the ending. And when a game does that, and I feel like it is true to itself and what it was trying to do, by the time the credits roll, I'm like, I like this. I'm good with this. This was a good game. But at the end of the day, there was a lot wrong with it that kept it down.
Mm-hmm. I wanna give Erica a chance to speak as well. I think Erica, you're in a similar boat to Selena. You haven't played yet, right?
Yeah, I haven't played or watched anything.
Okay.
To be honest with you guys, I've been so encapsulated with Final Fantasy XIV that, and so a lot of stuff is kind of crunched together, like gaming wise for me, because I'm trying to finish the patch content for Endwalker, and then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out in February. Tekken 8 comes out in January, and then Dawn Trail comes out in summer of 2024. So I'm trying to like plan out everything, you know, that goes along with, you know, giving the games their proper due diligence. Tekken is going to be a casual game for me because I'm going to get beat up, but I'm for sure going to get bullied. But and I do want to play 16, so like that I have to fit in as well before Dawn Trail comes out, because when Dawn Trail comes out, I want to go back to that and play it with Wordsmith and my friends, because they're all going to be playing it live, and that will be the first expansion for Final Fantasy XIV that I've had the opportunity to play in real time.
Okay,
So
that's cool.
yeah, so
Yeah,
16
it's
not
always a
yet.
different experience when you get to do it as it releases. Everybody's online. There's thousands of people in town, and all the zones are just full of people running around doing quests.
Yeah.
It's just got a different vibe than when it's empty.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for it. Now, I mean, like, I love like all the memes, all the jokes, all, you know, everything like that. I think Ben Starr is a national treasure. I hope he sees this. You know, and it looks like the voice actors, you know, it felt like they had a good camaraderie inside the game as well as outside of the game. And I think that speaks to why the voice acting and everything was as good as it was. And
yeah, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the game, that it's probably the best localization since 12. It's so good.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
one of the things that like
absolutely.
is perfect about the game. That like, why? Well, if you say like so much is wrong with it, why isn't it 8 out of 10? Because there's things like the music, the localization, and just like Clive as a main character that's just so good, like basically perfect, that it just elevates the game for me. And some of the plot
And
points.
Laura mentioned that all the accents. I love the diverse accents. I love the world building that they've done.
Welcome to my world in the north.
dongle.
I still think for me 12 is the benchmark. I don't think 12 has been surpassed in terms of its world
I agree.
and its variety. Like they had a lot more like exotic races and accents and all that. They took it to a level that I don't think it's been hit since then. But 16 definitely had its good aspects on that.
Yeah, that's the thing about 16 is it's like most of the accents are variations on like British accents, which is cool, but like
Yeah.
12 had basically everything.
Yeah.
There were so many different accents, and it was all so consistent from like region to region. It was great. It's great. It's still great.
Yeah, I think
I have a question for you, Josh. Sorry. If they tweak the like at least the difficulty of the combat, would that bump it up for you?
Yeah, no, it would be like an 8.5 if they bumped up the combat. A lot of what's wrong with the game comes into just it being too easy. That combat
And that
system could be
equates to
so much
0.5
fun.
of a percentage.
Yes, it's that big of a deal. Like because you haven't played the game, you don't understand how easy it is. Like there's almost no challenge.
Okay.
There's basically like 2 hard bosses.
that should be more of a point. Like I feel like that should be more.
Like, should it be more intricate, more powerful? Like in regards to how the icon system works. Like, how do you think they could improve that?
It should not be square, 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 triangle. Repeat 16 times, and then it's staggered. Blast all your icon abilities.
Yeah, so I was talking to Burke about this in the Discord a while back, and I really think that this game shouldn't have had a stagger system. The stagger system just kind of makes it so that you don't spend enough time in the flow of battle dodging attacks, getting your own in, and actually playing. You're just dumping abilities into the boss for like 20 seconds because of like the time dilation that happens. And that's not interesting compared to actually trying to dodge attacks and maneuver around the battlefield.
It was fun for the first chapter, but after the first chapter, and it was just that loop for every enemy you come across, and it's like after the 40th enemy you do that on, it's like my mind's numb playing this. Like it's okay. Maybe you might have to dodge and move every now and then. That makes it slightly interesting, but like it's not compelling to just like normal attacks and then icon dump. It's not. It's not good gameplay.
That's why I think 13 system's a little bit underrated. 16 was one of those games that made me look back on 13 a little bit more fondly, because people, like, especially when it was a newer game, they shit on the combat a bit. It's kind of like you got the auto battle available, auto select abilities. It's a corridor simulator. You can just attack this, that, the other. And there's definitely issues with the gameplay and the system of 13, but I think they had a better implementation of the stagger system and the overall, because on your way to trying to stagger, you have to paradigm shift to certain roles that are better at staggering, and then you also have the ability to use buffs and debuffs, so you increase your kind of ability to defend yourself. You can make staggering easier. You can then you can use your sentinel if an enemy is coming in with a big move to defend yourself. So I feel like there was a lot more depth in 13, especially when things got a bit more difficult and interesting. It just had a lot more offer to offer than 16. So honestly, this game made me look back on 13 a bit more fondly in some respects. I think it was a bit underrated, honestly.
13's post game.
And can I ask as well? Sorry, with the battle system for 16, then, am I hearing this right? You're only in control of Clive.
Yes.
You can. Do you set any kind of like default system for any of your other characters?
No.
They just run around.
Oh, they're just like completely auto.
At most, you have Torgal, which you can tell him to attack more than he is already attacking, and maybe give you a little bit
technically yes for Torgal, but I would say it's so rudimentary that it doesn't really count.
Yeah.
The
game feels better if Torgal is auto.
Yeah.
I think to add to what Rel was saying, I think the main problem is the repeatability of the battles, because there's not much. There is options with which you can fight with. You can choose whatever icon and whatever, but because the enemies are all essentially vulnerable to the same thing, which is mainly staggering, you can do whatever you want. and it will work. There's no accessories which will help you again, maybe like give you protection against certain enemies. There's no weapons which help you against certain enemies. There's no status effects. There's no elemental resistances. There's nothing that makes you essentially have a different experience with each battle, besides just the enemies themselves. And unfortunately, a lot of times we were met with reskins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
The
I
enemy
think
variety was pretty
to-
low in terms of the bosses.
Yeah, but I think to give it its props, I think the main shining point of the game was the icon battles, and I think if you don't enjoy those, I'm sorry, you're not a Final Fantasy fan.
Yeah.
Because they're so beautiful, honestly. I was when you're
They're very
out in the
spectacle.
stratosphere, literally, and you're fucking blasting. Sorry, you're blasting stuff, and you get all these colors and all this stuff happening, and I was jaw dropped, honestly, in some of these battles.
Yeah.
I thought Titan was the only icon battle I thought dragged on for maybe a few minutes too
It
long.
kept
Yeah,
going.
the last phase really felt like it shouldn't have been there or shouldn't have taken as
Yeah.
long.
Mm-hmm.
It was so long.
I have to say, I feel like personally, I would. That sounds like right up my alley. That sounds like the theatrics of it in the battle system sounds like it would be so cool to play. But it does sound like, in general, I feel like it will. I mean, they've got the basics of it right. They just need to like tune everything a little bit more to make it more complex.
It's heading in
It
the right
definitely
direction.
felt like a first try at this type of a Final Fantasy game. It definitely felt like you had all the elements of a Final Fantasy game in potential. But like one of the reasons I'm just so upset with it is because it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, agreed. I think I wanna ask you guys like a potentially difficult question to discuss, but
Ooh.
for me, like this game, we
Ooh.
already mentioned it, but it was like Josh said, I think like basically it's dead. Like people have already stopped talking about it, and that's not good. Like it's not that long since the game came out. Like I feel like it's died a pretty quick death
Yeah.
in that sense, and it's obviously making me think why. And it's interesting because it made me think of a game that like at first glance you're going to say just what does that have to do with anything, but it made me think of Bioshock Infinite a little bit. And the reason I thought of that is because it was a game that when I played it, I was just like I was completely engrossed, and like I loved the game so much, I was blown away by it. But then the game finished, and then I started to kind of think back on it, and I saw like what other people were saying about it, and I was like, basically my experience of it got kind of torn down a little bit over time, and I don't have the urge to kind of play it again afterwards. And for 16, I feel similar things, not to that extent, but it's like you guys, for example, you're mentioning like the icon battles being a highlight. I totally agree. I think the icon battles were sensational. Like overall, like as an average, I thought they were excellent, like really, really good. But I feel like so much of what makes 16 special for me was the literal experience and emotion of playing that first run, that it's difficult stuff to replicate. Like you've experienced it, and that's kind of that. Like I don't want to go back and experience that Titan battle again because I've experienced it. I've experienced the hype. It was awesome. Like it was really fun. But if I play the Titan fight again, I'm not going to be wowed again. I've done it already. And I feel like 16 it leans so heavily on like making you feel something in the moment, which is obviously a powerful thing, and games need to do that too. But I feel like so much of it was made up of that when it's done and the dust has settled, you're just like, okay, I had a good time while I was playing the game, but the lore wasn't deep enough for me to really want to investigate very hard about what's going on or play it again to grasp more of the lore, or the combat wasn't deep enough that I want to play it again in like a different way. I want to challenge myself. Like there's not even really that many good challenge runs you can do for it. I didn't really see a bunch of challenges popping up for the game after it's finished. No one really cared. The things that were the best about it the first time, a lot of that's just not really going to impact you if you were to play it again. And so I feel like, sorry, go on, Laura.
I have played it again. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of, like, obviously because of Final Fantasy mode, a lot of people kind of finished it and then they immediately went back to play it again. But I reckon, like, let's say a year's gone by, I just don't feel like it's going to have like as much legacy, because too much of what happened was just to do with like emotions and stuff that's very difficult to replicate in the future.
Yeah.
And that's how I
It
feel
was-
about that's how I feel about Bioshock Infinite right now. So much of what drew me into that game was just the weird and wacky kind of narrative that they filled there. And once I completed the game, I read about it and I understood everything that happened, I'm just like, I'm not going to have that same like, oh wow, like what the hell's going on? What am I experiencing here? If I just want to play a Bioshock experience, I'll just play the first game. But in the moment when I was playing it, I thought Bioshock Infinite was the best of the three that had come out at the time. But once the dust settled and looking back on it now, I'm just like, is it the same? And I feel like 16 maybe for me suffers a little bit from that. The more kind of deviated you get from that feeling while you were playing the game, the less it holds up over time potentially.
Yeah. I must admit, like since I finished it, whenever it was, I've had no want or desire to go back to it at all.
Same.
Even with the
Yeah.
DLCs being announced, I was a bit like,
Eh,
Game
yeah.
on, mash, mash, mash.
And I-
Like add 2 for this
Yeah.
strike. Oh, you've got
It's
your limit break, hooray! And then yeah, like you said, like more Clive. We need more of Gav's backstory, more of Sid's backstory, more of Karen and Goots' backstory. Like, where the hell did Karen and Goots get together, and why, and how is he so freakishly huge? And you know, like
I feel like
filler
yeah,
stuff.
'cause
Those
I
are
have
still different.
Yeah, because I have played it over and over. I'm on my 3rd playthrough right now, and I blasted through the DLC last night. And, like, I think a lot of it is that 16 doesn't leave a lot, like, hidden. Like, it gives you pretty much all of the story the first time round. Because you can pretty much complete all the quests on your first time round. It's not like you need to go through another one, another playthrough to complete all the quests because, oh, you missed it because you did it wrong. Like, the game is lenient in that way, but it's also, it doesn't leave anything new for you to spot kind of on a second playthrough. Like, if you watch a murder mystery and you can technically follow along and maybe find all the clues, but maybe you won't. And then once you discover it at the end, you can go back again and say, oh, they foreshadowed that. Oh, they set that up really well. I played 16 again, and it's like there's not really anything new you will get from another playthrough beyond like maybe upgrading your items, and that's kind of it. That
Yeah, it's all style
yeah.
over substance, in my opinion.
Mm.
And it's like the style was great. The icon battles are great. The audio was definitely the voice acting, the music, the like how everything swelled on the icon battles. That was amazing. Like when I was playing it, I was enjoying those parts. But yeah, the substance part that really gets people to go back to and has the depth of like the items and the armor and the weapons and how can I change it up a little bit this time around? Like, I don't want to play the same thing all over again. It'd be the
And
same
when you
thing.
play through a second time, you can't skip the icon battles, so they end up just taking a really long time for a cinematic battle that has very low stakes because like you basically just have 2 things. You can attack and maybe attack a little harder with the special move and then heal until you run out of healing things and then you die like I did because Mega Flare and against the Phoenix, I couldn't dodge it for some reason. That's the only battle I died on.
Yeah, it's just it was a lot of flash, but there's nothing like I've already forgotten about the game for the most part. It's just like no need to go back to it. I did enjoy some parts of it, but like compared to some other games like like you guys know I've been playing Elden Ring. Like that kind of defines how I want to spend like $70 on a game. Like that has so much depth to it. It is like depth personified in a game, and
It's a
I
beautiful
want to
game.
keep playing it over and like you guys got me hooked on it because it got I'm playing with my friends now. They're hooked on it, and like it's just so much to do. I want to make my 5th character on it because I could have a different experience. 16 just does not have any of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, From Software is winning.
Yeah, I think even in the Final Fantasy world, like it's Elden Ring is such an anomaly that it's very difficult for any game to live up to what Elden Ring achieved. But even within Final Fantasy games, it's like, well, what does make the great Final? That's why to me, it just can't be one of the greats. I've obviously spoken to some people who believe like it's a top 3 Final Fantasy for them, etc. But I'm just like, this game just cannot be one of the greatest. It just can't. Like,
Yeah.
there's too
It's
many.
not.
No.
And so
Like you're not
why are the great ones great?
like you're able to do all these challenges with Final Fantasy X. Like you're still playing it because you're still having fun with it. You can do different things. You can have different armors. You can have different weapons. You can randomize it. You can strategize it a little bit different. It gives you that freedom to play it differently and enjoy it in separate ways. Yeah, the replayability is great. It has a nice story. It has good combat, which 16 kind of has, but um, you have that replayability, and that's why it lives with you a little bit longer. And like I think I think 10's my favorite. And I think that's one of the greats because you can customize it. You have that replayability. 7 is loved so much because you can use different material for different things and play it how you want it rather than just going through it and stuff. So
With the
Match all the
junction system,
characters
you
too.
can junction what you want in 8. You
yeah.
can
hmm
break the game in the first disc, or you can do a no junction run or whatever. It's like there's multiple ways of playing a lot of the previous games prior to 16. 16, it's
Yeah,
just you do
it
it this
kind
way,
of
and that's it.
from what I'm hearing. From what I'm hearing, it kind of sounds like yeah, just well, from what I know from playing all the like the older games that have repeatable play ability for me, it just feels like from the beginning it feels like they set up like a lot of the mechanics and the battle system to like you could remix it on your own with so much of your own flavor. Like if I think about even like the sphere grid and all of the iterations of it that came for other games as well, like there are so many things that you can do. Like say nothing of the fact that you can also control other characters as well, which feels like a really big thing to me. I don't know if it's as big for other people, but I really like being able to control my entire party. Um, yeah, it just doesn't sound like, and that feels like a fundamental thing that I don't think you can fix later for 16. Um, and like even from the start, it just doesn't sound like you have much of the ability to remix how you play it.
Yeah, so the thing is you can, but no matter which icons you use, no matter which abilities you use, no matter which playstyle you use, it all funnels down into stagger, then dump. No matter
Yeah.
what you do, no
Stagger
matter how
and or
you
damage.
play, it
Into
is
what
stagger,
did
then
Rel
dump.
say? Square, 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 triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold on, there's a trigger you have to pull there.
That should be the title of a Reels review, just square, square, triangle, and just a Final Fantasy
Yeah.
16 thumbnail.
That's it. Square, 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 triangle times 8,000.
As
Yeah,
I
that,
think I got to use more of the abilities because I just didn't do stagger that well.
see, this discussion for me is interesting because we always talk so much about if we talk about why we love Final Fantasy games, I think a lot of people talk about the characters, the story, the world,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And then you think, but Final Fantasy 16 in general, for most people, it did that. It had like a good story, it had a good world, had good characters. So like, why is it not better? And then you kind of realize that when you start talking about this type of stuff, like how important our gameplay experience is too. It felt to me like 16, its gameplay design was too much in the service of the story telling, as opposed to making it a game where like I think Selena said as well, where like you give the player a bit more agency to modify how they experience it. And well, I guess it comes down to not just modify how you experience it, but have that modification actually generate some kind of different effect within the game. Because then, as Josh said, technically, yeah, well, you can play it a lot of different ways, but if it all amounts to the same thing, then it kind of negates the fact that you can play it in lots of different ways. So it really does goes to show that like even for people who seem to like, for me, I've always been more of a I value the story and the story experience and the characters and the camaraderie and the dialogue. That stuff matters more to me. That's why I still rate 16 relatively highly. But it's why if it doesn't have all of the other stuff to go with it, that's why for me it can't penetrate like that absolute top tier of the games.
It would have scored higher. Like I would have given it the 8 if the story was like perfect, like it hit the mark, and like all the arcs were great, and like I was really invested in it. Then yeah, I probably would have given it like a higher score, like a 7 or 8. But this story for me personally was just like it was good, but I I kind of forgot about most of it already. Like I didn't really care too much about. I don't remember most of the names. I don't remember most of the towns. I didn't care.
I feel like another unfortunate thing about it is also that, you know, we're in 2023, all of the systems that we're playing on these games on are so complex and have the ability to do so much that you've seen in all these other games that it's like, you have so much more to prove building a game now. Like you can't just build a beautiful story in a beautiful place. Like I feel like um the the battle mechanics have to be complex. Like the way you interact with other characters has to be a lot of thought has to be put into that, and like how these all mesh together because you have the opportunity to with a better system. It was so much easier in the days of, like, I don't know, like a PS1 where, like, you had the bare minimum because, like, the system could only take the bare minimum. So everyone's focusing on all the other details a little bit more and less on, like, how the game functions. But now it's under so much more scrutiny. I think it's a little tougher.
It's the Final Fantasy name too, because again, we're comparing it to all of these Final Fantasies in the past, and we've seen, oh, you have done this right in the past before, but like the hack and slash kind of style and genre is most of the gaming scene right now. Like, and turn-based systems, I guess they're like fading out because most of them are like moving forward. But the turn-based system is what we loved about Final Fantasy and the
Yeah.
customization of it.
I'd just like to say that a turn-based game is game of the year. It says something.
That's a good point.
Exactly.
What I want to ask Josh actually is, as someone who follows Final Fantasy 14 closely, I would ask Erica too, but she's not played 16 yet. Is it what you were expecting? At the end of the day, like a lot of the reason this game was so hyped was because of the 14 community saying, "Look, Yoshi P, we know what he can do. We believe in him. He's going to make an amazing game." Was it what you expected? And were you like, okay, I can tell that this was made by the same crew, or
Yes.
oh, I'm actually surprised, like they did this in 14, but they couldn't do the same in 16, and why couldn't they do what they did in 14 here, etc.?
So I will say this. As far as story goes, characters go, and just the general structure of the game, I was like, yes, this is definitely what I was expecting. As far as, let me see, where was I? As far as the side questing goes, it was Final Fantasy 14 side quests. Like 100% the questing was just Final Fantasy 14 quests. It was so painfully similar in the worst way as far as the side quests went. Because it was MMO side quests. And I guess I'm not as like averse to that because I played 14 and enjoyed 14, so I've kind of been conditioned into liking it. But some other people who didn't play that game will probably think worse of the 16 side quests. And it's probably just because I've been conditioned into doing 14 side quests and not like minding them as much, I guess. And like, let me see. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about as far as that went. The difficulty. 14 has some really, really hard raids. Some really, really good challenges in it. And so I kind of expected Creative Business Unit 3 to be able to pull that off. And then when the game just didn't have super optional content, that it was disappointing. Because I've played the Ultimate Raids in 14, I've done the Savages, and it's like, man, if they want to tune a fight to be really hard and to like really test you, they can. And I guess with it being like a different battle system director, maybe like the people who made the battle system in 14 weren't really making like the battles in 16. I don't know. But at the end of the day, they get difficulty pretty much right in 14 with like the different tiers of difficulty of like the different types of content. And in 16 it wasn't there. And that was disappointing because I know they could do it and they didn't.
Fair play. Okay, is there anything anyone else wants to say about 16 before we move on to next segment? Have we
8
said
out of
all that
10
needs to be
wouldn't
said?
play again.
Yeah, Lady Karen's my
Quite.
long lost mother-in-law.
We might see her, Laura. I think her voice actor is gonna be.
Really? You'll have to go and talk to her. You'll have to, like, video us talking the same. That'd be it.
No, what I was
I
saying,
think
since we're going to KupaCon, I think it's still just Laura, right, who has the ticket.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, and I think she's gonna be there. Karen's voice actor, I think.
Oh my gosh, you guys can like
Oh wow, yeah.
do a side by side.
Yeah, we need you guys to reenact a scene. You can be Goots.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready to move on to the next segment? Okay, basically I think we'll do like one person select a hot take that they like from that community
there.
list, and we'll discuss. So, Psych, you can start.
Okay, beautiful one for me to start. Final Fantasy 17 should be turn-based, and Final Fantasy 8 needs a remake.
Okay, you then I guess as the person reading, you can have the first response.
Okay, so I think the first half is I think we've discussed enough on Final Fantasy 16 to have our thoughts, but I'm not like fully agreeing with it. I don't mind the direction of the game going towards a more sort of action-based, but I think keeping some form of turn-based element to it would be the optimal choice. I think Burke, we've discussed this together so many times that 7 remakes probably like the sort of the way forward, and it was what we had hoped 16 to be, I think. And Final Fantasy 8 is a remake. Anyone saying no should go away.
So does anyone have any thoughts on that? Either one?
I don't want to get too much into 7, but I do think that it has the battle system that I was craving the most while I was playing 16. Like, it has, like, the activeness, like, oh, you are push a button, swing a sword, but you can, like, control the abilities of your allies. You can swap to your allies whenever you want to, like, to speed up their ATB or to control them, because you just like them. And, like, it freezes time so that you can think about it, but it's not like 15 where you physically had to go into the menu and hit wait time, and then every time you stop moving your character, time freezes entirely. Like, it was a good balance between the active and the like ATB, like stop and think out your plan kind of thing. And like the diversity, the ability to use your whole party, I think that was the best balance that we've so far had of the active systems still being integrated with the ATB.
But then I guess the take is that they want to go back to turn-based. So like for me, I would say no. I think like going back to turn-based, I can't see it. Like it's I don't think that's going to happen. For me, always Final Fantasy X remake in the future is always the acid test, because it's so fundamental to the Final Fantasy X experience for it to be the CTB turn-based system. But whenever they do remake it, who knows how long it would have been since the game came out and since the HD remasters came out. That will they just say, yeah, whatever, whoever kind of knows about the OG, get over it. Like we're going for a new system, or would they not? But I think for 17, I no, like I don't think turn-based is going to happen, and I don't see 7 remake as a turn-based either. Obviously, it's more of a hybrid system, but I would still call it more of an action-based system than than a turn-based system. I don't feel like I'm taking turns when I'm playing Final Fantasy 7 remake. So I disagree with that one, but I think for 8 remake, yeah, I mean, of course, after seeing what they can do with 7 remake, there's no doubt that the 8 remake would be spectacular.
I would like it for it to be turn-based because they've shown, like, Persona 5 and Baldur's Gate have shown that turn-based can still work in today's climate, or I don't know, games. I don't think they will ever do it though, because I think they even quoted that said like nobody wants to do turn-based games anymore. Everybody wants to do like live action. I know. I would like to. I know you do. I like it. And a lot of people like it. People who played Persona and Baldur's Gate.
Mm-hmm.
That turn-based and it works.
It's sold over 20 million copies, so they did something right.
Right. I think it can work. I just don't know if they will do it.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know for the main line of games, but maybe side games. Like if they have something like Tactics that's like it's not a numbered on the series, but like it is a game that's on the side. Like if they have more side games, they could still do turn-based. But for the main franchise, I'm not really sure.
I think that's what remakes are for. For me, it's just like there's no better opportunity than to keep the turn-based kind of flavor than when you're remaking games. Like Final Fantasy IX remake, there's so many rumors of it. Like, is it happening? Is it real? Is it not? The Nvidia leaks, this, that, the other. There's still no official announcement, but I've heard enough to be pretty convinced that we're gonna hear some kind of Final Fantasy IX remake announcement eventually. But that, for me, that game, like with its art style, everything that there's, just keep it a similar system. Just tweak it, make it a bit better, and just keep it. You don't have to have a faster paced action system for 9. But just save it for that.
If it's not turn-based or it's not this like 7 remake style, then it kind of kills the whole vibe of it, and it won't do as well, I think.
I'm so convinced that Square Enix probably has a department within within it that is purely dedicated to trying to figure out how to appease anyone who's requesting, or like how to integrate turn-based into current games. Like they've tried it a few different ways. I'm so convinced they're still not done trying to like solve how to appease anyone who still like desperately wants to keep that turn-based system, and how to bring it into like modern games. I mean, like if I think about like Square Enix as a company, I'm sure like they're aware of how many people like want it so bad, and I'm sure they're just trying to figure out that secret sauce, because everybody like has an opinion about it for every new game that comes out.
I just don't think that that's where we are anymore. And I'm sure a lot of people would agree that turn-based is just not where the era of gaming is going. Because
Eric is in the get over it camp.
Yeah, I really am. I'm like, God, just get over it. Because, I mean, on the flip side of that coin, people who want turn-based, for me, it feels like a nostalgia factor of having that turn-based piece. But on the other side of it, I think that the people who like the hack and slash type of gaming style, if they were to be given a Final Fantasy that went back from active gameplay to turn-based, you would hear them complaining too. And I don't know how necessarily to strike that balance between the two. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake did a decent job of that, where it kind of slows down the game rather than stopping it entirely, unless you're on, I believe, easy mode. And I think that kind of helps. But I mean, we all know there's no pleasing everyone. I respect both sides.
I think one of the major issues that we see with the hack and slash is the magic part of it. 15 had a really awful magic system, and so did terrible. 16. 16 had like you can poke and like you could hit a button and Clyde would just kind of shoot a little fireball or whatever.
But
and
all
it did
the
nothing.
elements were the same.
Yeah, and it was like, this is not. I never used it. It adds nothing. So if they can somehow figure out a way in order to incorporate magic better into the hack and slash, then it would be a lot more fun.
I still think that they have to be a business about it, and they just have to look at the numbers. I still firmly believe that even a game like 16, most of the people buying these games are Final Fantasy fans who have been playing the older games too. It's not this thing where, it brought in millions of new followers and stuff. It's just not the case. I still think the large majority of people buying this game are people like us, people that have been playing this game for years. So this whole we're trying to capture a new audience by making it appeal more to blah, it's just not working. It's still us. We're still the same people. We're still buying these games.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, read the room. It's not working. Like, if I would understand if this game, like, despite everything we've said, if it sold some really incredible numbers and it really brought in a whole new like realm of people into the space, and the fandom like really expanded as a result, then I say okay, fine. Like, for example, like Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'd never played a Zelda game before. Zelda Breath of the Wild, played it for the first time, loved it, and I'm sure there were literally millions of people like me who had never played Zelda. Breath of the Wild was probably their first game, and it was such a departure from the older systems. And the game sold out over like 30, 40 million copies or something like that. Like, if they had like some form of that kind of success, then I say, yeah, okay, whatever direction you took, you've really like struck gold. Keep going. But it's just not happening. Like that's just not the case. So I'm just like, you don't need to keep pushing this whole we must innovate, we must keep capturing new players kind of attitude. Like, just whatever you'd been doing up until about 10 to 12-ish, and well, at least 13, the first game, was working fine. It's like, you don't need to keep pushing this. But that's why I'm still an advocate of just consistency. Like, 7 Remake had a good battle system, use that as your blueprint, and then just modify that. Just have that be like the skeleton, and then just change it around a little bit, just the same way it was for like Final Fantasy 3, like Final Fantasy 4 through to 9 or something. Just like, you don't need to keep reinventing the wheel, trying to capture new people every time. But
yeah, it's kind of true. Like, on that point,
go ahead, Celia.
Like, what was it? Like, I don't know. So one that immediately comes to mind is like when God of War did their switch up, because like their franchise was seriously dying and really needed a remake, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, that's a really good point to switch up your system so aggressively, because like there is like factual evidence that like, you know, your market is dying because no one thinks you're relevant anymore. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure like people have been playing Final Fantasy games for years, and that will persist, and that has probably continued to persist throughout their games. So now they're just kind of constantly like irking everyone with all these aggressive changes that we never asked for, I guess. Or maybe we have been asking for them. I don't really know as a general consensus.
I binged through like the DLC last night, and this is not a spoiler, but there's this very funny thing where like a cutscene happens right before you're like, oh, there's a fight coming up. There's a lot of fights obviously coming up. But it's like the cutscene right before the fight comes up. Clive like actually shoots a fireball from his hand, and it's exactly as disappointing as it is in gameplay, because he's just like tapping, like it looks like he's just tapping the triangle button, just like fireball, fireball, fire. There's no sound effect. There's barely any sound effect. It's like the fireball is just like fireball tap, fireball tap.
He's just trying to do the old square triangle.
Yeah.
It was so disappointing that I laughed.
Oh dear. Okay, let's move on to the next hot take. Does go on, Real, you can go next, and then we'll.
All right, this is a little bit different, but let me bring up the video. One we already talked about. One is FF8 getting remade. We talked about that. When will Wordsmith admit that he enjoys Final Fantasy IX?
Yes.
And when will Burke start the 24/7 Kingdom Hearts stream?
That's my James Burke.
All right, so it seems I've been personally called out. So, James, buddy, listen. Let me get real serious right now. That's not going to happen.
So close to the screen.
That's never going to happen. You see, some people might think, you know, like I'm full of jokes. So some people might think, oh, he's just like messing around. Like he's just goofing off. Like he doesn't actually think that about Final Fantasy IX. I hate Final Fantasy IX. I despise that game. I need you to understand that everything I say about it is completely serious. I will not ever say anything good about Final Fantasy IX, except I like the boss theme and I like Vivi. That's it. That's it.
Would you play?
He's a good boy. He's a real good boy. But that's it. That's all I got to say.
9, if the rumors are true and they remade 9, would you play it?
I'd probably give it a fair shot. Yeah, like I mean.
Yeah, he would.
I would play it.
He'd give it a shot, but I think he's a bold-faced liar for saying he'd be fair about it.
Force him
Yeah.
to sit
It's
in
like
front of the
it's
computer
like I assume
and
it would
play
be a
it.
fair trial.
You know, it's kind of funny. There's quite a few comments on the comment section for the hot takes that are like Final Fantasy IX hate comments, and it's like, man, it feels like the Final Fantasy fandom, it's always like a cycle of which games getting hate and which games like being like, oh, this is the underrated one. This is the GOAT. Like, you guys got to play this one. Like, it was 7, and then like it felt like 6 had a while of like everyone was just like being like, yeah, 6 is the best game ever. And recently, like, I think 10 won like some sort of like official poll of like what's the best game. It feels like it's always changing. And so I wonder if like, is it coming around to where like 9 hate is cool now, and then like it won't be cool in a while?
It always cracks me up, like people were like talking about Final Fantasy 13, for example. It's a garbage game, it's linear, it's XYZ, and now everybody's like, oh my gosh, I love Final Fantasy 13 so much. And I'm like, guys,
No, that's what
It's
I'm
my
talking
influence,
about. That's what I'm
obviously.
talking about. Like, it cycles
Final
around.
Fantasy 15 turned 10 years old. What, last? Not 10 years old.
I was about to say,
like,
oh my
Why would you
god.
say
Not
that
10,
to me?
not 10.
Erica, don't say those kind of things.
I think I just grew some gray hairs right there.
It just recently had an anniversary, and
My
everybody's
back
like,
just suddenly
oh,
started hurting.
everybody's like, oh, Final Fantasy 15 was such an underrated game. It was so good. Da, 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 da. I'm like, y'all were just hating on it 2 years ago.
Yep.
Suck my ass.
I want to say it's probably because so many rumors are coming out, and like so much new content is coming out for Final Fantasy IX the last year, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably on everybody's mind right now.
I do think I think you're onto something there. I mean, I think the more popular something is, or the more it's generally talked about, the more you're going to hear people shitting on it, basically. And I think 9 is a bit more of a, because of all the remake rumors, and well, we had the Memoria project thing that would like create a lot of traction on the internet and all that kind of stuff. Well, now we've got like voice mods for the game. Like 9 is still being talked about quite a lot. And so I think that probably makes it a bit more likely. I think personally, I think 15's never going to have this was actually a good game. It's just underrated by a lot of the community. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean,
like,
there
there's
are
always
those
going to be
people. Like, since the Royal
Yeah, there's
version
always
came
those
out,
people.
the people who played it after they finished the game effectively will be like,
Yeah.
oh, it was such a great game. And it's like, no, it wasn't. Like,
No.
No.
Yeah.
did you play it on release? Did you see what that
Yeah.
game they actually released that game as? No.
Yeah, for me, I can't help but think even the Royal version, it's okay. I'm sure it makes it a bit better, but it's not. It doesn't change the overall narrative. I think.
Yeah,
of the
It can't
I
situation.
save
agree
it.
about that.
I do think the 24/7 stream brought me a lot to attention of the older games, because like I had known 9, but it had been a while ago. I had known 8, I had known 6's story, but like seeing someone actually play through it again, it does and when it comes around the stream, obviously, it's like I do enjoy watching it on the stream. Like it brings back like, oh, it's nostalgic, or oh, I didn't see that before. Oh, this is really good.
This cycling stuff is not just Final Fantasy. I've seen it like with this Sonic games. Like historically, the worst game ever was Sonic 06, and it was like just a completely not finished game. Probably needed at least 2 years more polish. And now I'm seeing posts like, it was actually kind of a good game. Like, no, it was literally unplayable. Like, it was awful. It deserves like a 0 out of 10, and like it's awful. And so like, it's not just Final Fantasy. People are just like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird phenomenon. Yeah.
Call the ambulance for all these people.
So
That's my hot take.
What was the second part of the hot take? Asking me about Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, when's the
Yeah.
24/7 Kingdom Hearts stream coming?
Oh, that one's also not going to happen. Much like Josh appreciating Final Fantasy 9. I always promise Kingdom Hearts on the channel. Kingdom Hearts 1 will get played someday, but nothing beyond that. That's probably the best I can do.
It's a shame. Like kind
Would you
of.
record it, or would you just like play it on your own just to see how it was?
Oh, Kingdom Hearts, I definitely play it for the channel. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's so many people over the years. It still has quite a lot of crossover. I
Mhm.
think people should see my
Yeah.
first experience. And,
Yeah, I think
and
it'd
go
do well because it has a Final Fantasy tinge to it. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
just a slight
Yeah.
tangent. I'm just just play 1 and 2. That's fine because those are like the third one
Like
Yeah.
doesn't
1 and
have.
2. Don't think about everything else.
Yeah.
Don't listen.
Yeah, forget the
No,
rest.
yeah. If you were to go into that realm, just 1 and 2 because you can
Yeah.
go in a weird
Everything
deep rabbit
else could
hole,
choke.
and like it's not worth that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And
One
the
is
third
just
one
a
doesn't
very
even have any
good
Final
one, though.
Fantasy in
Yeah.
it, so it's not
One
worth
is
it
a
for
very
the channel.
good standalone game because I don't think they were planning other games around it, or if they were, it was like not as big of, oh, we have to foreshadow something.
Okay.
100%.
Between Kingdom
I
Hearts.
was actually.
Go ahead, Selena.
Oh no! Come finish your thought.
So between Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, isn't there like Kingdom Hearts 2.1, 2.5, 2.8?
Those
2.XX,
were
like...
they were remakes. So like in prep for 3, they made like bundles. Like there was like 1 and like 2 of the side games. It was 1.5,
Yeah.
and then 2.5 was 2 and some of the side games. So they wanted to prep people for
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3. So they released all these new bundles, and then 3 really didn't. I don't know. It kind of you needed to play like one of those 6 games in order to like care about one part of the game.
To fully understand 3, you need to play all of them.
Yeah, as someone who's never played those games and know nothing about the story, that was so confusing to me. Like, I would see, like, every few years, someone would be like,
Don't even worry about it.
Kingdom Hearts 2.8 playthrough. And it's like, what the...
As someone who has
They
kept
really
up
shot
on the Final
themselves in the
Fantasy
foot with
or
that.
Kingdom Hearts franchise, don't worry, it's still confusing even if you're experiencing it.
Yeah,
I'm
it's not
so
worth the time.
convinced. Like, yeah, like I think Yaz was mentioning it before, but I'm so convinced that when they started this, they were like, "Oh, fun crossover, Disney and Final Fantasy. We'll do one game because that's probably all it's worth." And then everybody flipped out, and they were like, everybody in the writers' room is probably just like, "Oh fuck."
I think what happened
they-
is like
They made 2. They made
Yeah.
2, which was great.
Yeah.
But like
even 2 though, like it
was
was
good
confusing. The
was
whole
good.
first
2
5
it was-
hours was like
2
what's
came
happening?
out, and then they had to release
was
the
still
other
good.
games
It was-
to explain what was happening in 2, which I like those games, don't get me wrong, I love them.
2 was
But
amazing.
everything after 2,
I don't
I
think you
lose my
needed it.
mind.
I don't
Well,
think you needed
you
it.
didn't-
For
It's
the
just,
first
like,
hour,
you can self-contained too. You could leave.
Yeah.
You can still leave things unanswered. Like, as someone
Yeah.
who just like enjoys
Yeah,
like
it was still
books
very
and-
good.
2
and, like,
is
video
my
games, like,
favorite
you can
in the
leave things-
franchise.
I think the
You
confusion
can
was
leave things
created.
unanswered.
The confusion was
Sorry?
mainly created because of the success of the first game, and the creators essentially went, okay, now we have to release this on every console. And it had a Game Boy Advance release, it had a Nintendo DS release,
Yeah.
and they made different games for every console. And instead of saying, okay, let's just not make
Yeah.
this game canon, they wanted to make every game canon.
Yeah.
They just
Yep.
like
Yeah.
chained the core writers that like created the first and second game in the room, and they were like, "Well, we've established that you make money, so you're just gonna keep doing this forever and ever." And they were like,
Yeah, and they kept like stitching
like-
on these story plots, and then like
Yeah.
they're like, "Crap, we gotta have a way to have this all culminate somehow."
Are you sure you want to
like
play
I'm
this,
so
Bert?
like I'm so convinced that like they probably only cared to make enough plot to last the 2 games, and then everything else was just like a hack job because they were forced to do so. Like, I'm so convinced that that's how
Yeah.
all of
2 was
Kingdom Hearts like
I
got
really
put together.
liked where 2 ended off, and then the only place they had to go was backwards after that, like explaining things with those games. But when they went forward, I was like, okay, I am losing you. You're losing me.
It is a bit of a rabbit hole.
But you could get
Yeah.
in a rabbit hole about this shit for like ever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
we gotta leave.
We gotta
That's
get
why
out.
to wrap things up about Kingdom Hearts, like I say, I have basically promised 1 on the channel, but from there on I promise nothing. Maybe I won't even like 1, and then I just won't play anymore. But if I do like 1 and I think, okay, this is pretty fun, then I'll probably play 2, and then I will
Call
think
it.
long and hard about my future. So we'll see.
And your sanity.
Okay. Who wants to take the next hot take? Okay, Jay. Then we'll do Lauren.
Okay, let's see if I find which one I could take. This one maybe, considering Rebirth is almost just around the corner. Hot take: Final Fantasy VII should not have been remade, at least not in the way it was, episodic story changes, etc.
I think that it's too early to say that because I won't mind it if they keep like the rest of the story like relatively true to how it went in the original. If from here on out all the major story beats are basically what they were, then it's fine. It's nothing at all. They just like made a new final boss for the like first episode. That's whatever. But if they start changing the major story points, yeah.
Jay, I'm curious what you think about this because you're such a big.
Yeah, I'm actually. After seeing that, I didn't get to see the. I haven't studied the last trailer that dropped a couple of days ago, but because after playing the first remake, I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling a bit miffed. I was feeling, well, yeah, a bit pissed off considering where they were taking the story and everything. And I was going through everything that, okay, this is a red herring, it has to be a red herring, they need to keep the entire story basically the same. But after seeing the trailers for Rebirth coming out, even though I'm such a great fan, I mean, Final Fantasy VII is such a big part of my life, really, and the original story, I adore the original story, I absolutely love it. But actually, with seeing the, we have the, I'm not sure if it's a different timeline or just an alternative timeline, whatever. Seeing both Zack, Aerith, and Cloud in different realities, sort of. I mean, it got interesting for me, actually. I'm slightly excited to see where they're going with it. So I'm going to keep an open mind about it, actually. I'm actually looking forward to seeing where everything goes in the end. And I'm going to wait until we get all the three. It's 3 episodes, I think, that are going to be. And I'm just going to wait until to make my final judgment after everything is done, basically. So, but yeah, I'm slightly positive considering how unpositive I was after playing the first game.
I remember how upset you were, Jay, when you finished the remake. You were absolutely #fuming.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to try and view them as maybe almost like a separate game from the original.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have the original anyway, so I'm always going to replay it every now and then. And anyway, but yeah, I'm curious to see where they're going with it.
If they were going to do it scene for scene, word for word, it would be a remaster. Surely it would not be a remake.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that either, basically. But I think it's where I'm at right now. I'm excited to see where they're going with it.
Yeah, because they've got that caveat on there of it being a remake. They've kind of got some artistic license to go with it where they want, because people complain. They're like, well, we never told you it was going to be a complete scene for scene, rejig of the.
I don't know that I accept that. I don't know that I accept that as an excuse, because I feel like they baited a lot of people into like getting on the hype train, because everybody, I think, assumed that it was going to be like a remaster. I think technically it's not that I really have issues with them like changing things. If they like, that's, they own the IP for this, they do whatever they want. But like, that felt like a bait and switch that I was like,
I think what dragged a lot of people in is like obviously the trailers that they dropped with the big scenes, like the bombing run at the start when Cloud's making his merry way down the train. There's the scene of him stood in front of Shinra HQ and all that shit. There's Aerith down doing what she's doing in a drain and all the rest of it. And I think because people saw that, they thought, oh, great, it's going to be a complete remaster of the original. But so yeah, it is kind of
they showed all the iconic scenes basically.
Yeah, and then they went, look at these Ghosts of Christmas Yet to Come. Where have these come from?
Yeah, I feel like they're in a. I think they're actually in a good position right now because they've shown us some things that I think a lot of people appreciated. Like we've talked already a lot about the battle system. I think a lot of people agree that the literal remaking of the characters in the world has been very successful. That the
Yeah.
character models, the voice acting, the way the world looks, the general feel of the game. Like I think they got a lot of things right, and I still think the biggest criticism that most people had of the first game was just everything that happened as a result of it being set in Midgar and Midgar only. And so therefore they had to pad the game out because it was Midgar only. They had to change how they introduced Sephiroth. They had to change what happens at the end of Midgar. And those things generally were the things that people weren't as happy with.
Yeah.
So they're in a better position now because they can expand things out a lot. That we've got more characters coming in. We get a much bigger playground to play in. And I think people like Jay are generally like the reason why I think they're in a good place, because even people that were very skeptical after the end of the first game, I think that the trailer work has been fantastic. Like they've done some really nice trailers so far, and it's got people in the position where they're like, you know what, okay, this is wacky, like this isn't what I know, and there's a chance that they could completely like just throw the old story out the window, but I can't shake the fact that I'm kind of curious about what's going on here and how they're going to pull this off. So I think they've captured a lot of people's attention and curiosity, and a lot of us are just wondering, okay, so all right, fine, you're going to change some things potentially, it's going to be a very different story than what we know, but what are you actually going to do? Like, I need to see like what you're actually doing here. And so if they manage to actually nail it and they pull off like, either it ends up being like a big sort of bait and switch and we go all these different directions to end up where we would have been in the main game anyway, which is kind of what I'm still hoping will happen, then it could end up being a really special game, because a lot of people did, me included, really like 7 Remake. I have a sneaky suspicion, like, if they get everything right, Rebirth might be the best of the trilogy, potentially.
Yes.
And so I think they're in a good place. Now, if they do all of this, and then it really does turn into, what the hell have they done with the story? This looks nothing like the Final Fantasy I know, and I don't like this, then the third game's going to suffer hard, because people are going to be like, okay, I'm not invested anymore. I don't like what you're doing. And then you have to question, to go back to the original hot take, then you've got to question, like, was it worth it in the end to do it this way? But like Josh said, I think we really kind of just have to wait and see how it pans out at this stage, and then kind of post-mortem afterwards, like, has it been a success or not? But I think for me, Final Fantasy needs remakes. So many of its golden age is come and gone. I don't care what anyone says. The golden age for Final Fantasy was, for me at least, between like Final Fantasy 4 and 10/12. I'll give 12 as well. Since then, I think we're out of the prime of Final Fantasy. That I think most people would agree with that. And so one clear way to restore some of the glory days is to make some really damn good remakes of the best. And well, if you're looking for any kind of inspiration, look at what they've done with Resident Evil. Right? I mean, to me, there's no reason why you can't remake 4 through to 9, let's say, in a similar vein to what Capcom achieved with Resident Evil, and you've got like 30 years worth of material there, gonna make you big bucks, gonna make big sales, and you're gonna keep the OG fans happy. You can keep making a new game. So Final Fantasy VII Remake set in this precedent of, okay, we're in an era now where remaking games is going to be a thing. I think overall that's a good thing, but obviously provided that they kind of do it the right way. So, yeah.
I know there are a lot of people who are experiencing Seven's entire story for the first time in Remake, and I do think a lot of the older games, like, they're just more difficult to play just because they are so old. So being able to like see them in this new setting where it's easier to comprehend the story and not get lost too much in the older style of the game, I do think that is a good thing.
Selena, I think you had something you wanted to mention.
Oh yeah. One thing I was going to say is that I think a good thing they have going for them right now is the timeline for everything. And I don't mean about like the timeline in the plot of the game. I mean like physical like timeline for Square Enix to like churn these out, because I think, everybody gets that initial like bristle at like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting, or like, I'm not like a fan or something like that. everybody gets that initial spike, but then like it mellows out a little. You can digest the story a little more. You can think about it, and then you can kind of like level out your expectations. And now we're in this spot where everyone's just like, and they do all these really good trailers where everybody gets like equally excited about everything because it just looks so visually stunning. The plot is moving forward, and I think they can also, I mean, I don't know that they would ever admit or say if this was happening, but I think they can also course correct and adjust things as they go if they're feeling like the temperature of the game is not being received as they had anticipated.
Yeah, I don't mind that they're using, because the original game, as far as I know, had a lot of things cut just due to limitations at the time. So I appreciate that they're taking this opportunity to flesh out everything that they really wanted to do with 7. I don't know if they really needed to do a trilogy, or maybe they could have fit it into, because I really had some major issues with the first one. Just, well, mostly the whispers. Like, I hated the whispers in terms of
Yeah.
writing and the plot with them. But I do appreciate that, they're really, I guess not really taking their time, but they're putting in a major effort to flesh things out for probably the most popular entry in the series. And I mean, it's giving a lot of fans what they want. They just want to play in a newer style. I mean, I'm sure they did a lot of like play testing with this and seeing what people liked. So um, to do that and get the full story that they want to tell, I think it's going to be interesting.
Are you happy for me to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
good.
Laura, are you ready?
Sure am.
Okay, go for it.
Hot take. How can they make a masterpiece of tragic feelings like FFX and ruin it with FFX2? I kind of get where they're coming from on this, because we ended at 10 on a very, very somber note, didn't we? And then X2 explodes into the scene like Charlie's Angels, and we get 3 very squeaky, very hyperactive young female protagonists for a good half of so of the game. But for me, what I like about X2 is like the further you get into it, the more likable it becomes, because it steps away from the silly airheady, I'm just a little 17-year-old girl, or whatever she is in that, is what should be 19 or something.
19.
We don't really know what
Yeah.
we're in. And then
Mhm.
it gets better towards the end. And that was my first experience actually of the job system. You know, the
Mhm.
dress fears that was in X2.
Yeah.
I'd not
Mhm.
played like 4 in particular that had loads of job systems, or 5 and 6. I thought this is really good that you can jazz it up, and I want to be a physical hitter here, and I want a mage, and I want a healer, or I actually really enjoyed it. But I do see where they're coming from, that X ended on such a emotional bombshell that we all cried into our cups of tea for weeks, and then we get hit by Pain, Riku, Yuna, and the ever pervy brother, and you just
Yeah,
think,
it was.
what on earth happened between, oh my god, the love of my life's died and I'm never going to see him again, to I'm going to go around the world and steal things and shit.
It was such a. It was a pretty much. It was a big shock with the tonal shift. It was insane.
I
I
think
remember.
Like,
was fan service, wasn't it? With obviously the relatively skimpy outfits that the
Yeah.
girls were in, and the whole change scene where at one point, if you froze it looked like they were naked. Ugh.
I
ooh.
I remember asking Hetty about that when she was in the chat. Like, how, like, I asked her about the tonal shift. I forget what she said in response to it, but I mean, she was very professional about it. But yeah, it was like such a. It had to be weird for her to like go from like this very like had like long skirt, like very modest Yuna to like very chipper. I'm sure it was very different for Hetty to voice act that. But yeah, it was also like I played 10 a lot when I was a kid for like years, I think, because off and on. And then I remember getting X2, and like then my dad came in. I'm like, he's like, "What are you like playing with girls and dress up for?" And I'm like, "It's I thought it'd be like the first one. I don't know."
And, and I wrote something on this recently where I was complaining about this because I wouldn't mind if we saw the shift between Yuna like actually trying to live her life, because in the first game she lived most of her life thinking she was going to die, and the thing is like, and she ended on the tragedy of it wasn't her who died or like disappeared, it was somebody else, and she's left behind. She has to find out a new identity for herself. Fine, fine, absolutely fine. But then it's like in Eternal Calm kind of ruined it for me, because it's just like, oh, the 2 years she has been doing nothing, absolutely nothing, and then she abruptly flips the switch, and suddenly she's trying to be this person who's absolutely different from who she is. And there was this one scene with like Tobly or whatever, where they were like, "Oh, let's just walk away. We don't have to get bothered with this." And then Yuna's like, "Oh, let's hear him out." And then Riku complains like, "Oh, there she goes again." It's like, why is she trying to be non-compassionate? Like, Yuna would absolutely volunteer to help someone in need. Why is she trying to be someone she's not, only for her to turn back and be the person she is in any way? And then, like, the end of the game is the only time I respect her, because she actually addresses the consequences of the end of 10. She's like, "Do you know what it felt like to have to kill my own Aeons? It hurt. I don't want anyone to die anymore." And it's like, there's the Yuna that I recognize. Why were you trying to be somebody else this whole game?
Yeah, I think that honestly that's most of what I wanted to say in response to this. I think like if it were me, they tasked me with trying to make a 10-2, but they were like, you need to do it in this type of style or way. I do think what was missing was like maybe the first chapter of the game showing some kind of, basically imagine Eternal Calm being done better and it lasting like 4 to 6 hours, let's say, where we truly see what she went through after the end of 10. We start to see a shift in, she finds herself like, for me, the whole like she takes on a different identity, I don't have a problem with that because she's a kid. I mean, she was like 17 at the time. She had to deal with some really serious trauma in her life. Maybe, fake it till you make it, pretending to be someone else, like having a different, outlook on life, try and live things a different way. Maybe like she wanted to just try something new. And I get all of
Yeah.
that, but I think it was so jarring to the way that they started the game in terms of tone compared to the end of 10. Like they must have known that when 10.2 comes out, a lot of people are probably going to replay 10 first, and then they're going to play 10.2. It's not going to be, oh, I haven't played 10 in years, I vaguely remember what's going on, let me just play 10.2. Because then it maybe works a little better. But if you've relatively fresh from playing 10, and then you play the opening like scenes in the few hours of 10.2, for me, they went too far.
Yeah.
And they should have really kind of smoothed that out a little bit, like show a bit what happened there, show the transition a little bit, show that development, see why did she become this songstress Yuna person? Like why does she look like that? Why does she act like that? Why is she doing what she's doing? And I think that would have gone a long way into easing people into like what this game is going to be now.
Yeah.
And then I think that would have saved a bit of the issue,
Rather than
because
just like throwing you into a little mix concert right at the beginning.
yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it was too much, and it kind of, I can see it creating like a knee-jerk reaction in a lot of people. And it's not because like, oh, it's an all-female protagonist team, I don't want to play now. For me, it's just the tonal shift and like the way that they introduce like everything. For me, they just jumped off the edge a bit too much.
Yeah.
But since we're already talking about 10.2, my hot take was going to be about the fact that I definitely see a decent niche of people who say that 10.2's combat was, well, there's one here that literally says 10.2 has the best combat of any Final Fantasy.
Ew.
Which,
Ugh.
the best combat of any Final Fantasy is the hot take part. But I genuinely agree that 10.2's battle system is actually pretty good.
Yeah,
I
there's
did like it.
all the dress spheres and the garment grids and
I
the
liked the dress spheres.
yeah, but it was the innate abilities in the garment grids as well that give you more scope for doing different things. Like some of them, you went through certain gates and you had like you were fireproof or you were poison proof, or
Yes.
I really liked that side of it. Really liked that side of it.
I think the one thing I just didn't like about the dress sphere system was like in order to get the limit break essentially of the game was you had to like go through every garment in the thing, and I'm like, I just want to stick with the one I want to use, or maybe one other one, but like that's so
Yeah.
much work there. Like I know they had like specific ones where it just had two to make it a little bit easier, but like that part I really didn't like, especially when I played as a kid. Like that's all I wanted to do was like become super powerful and get all the good stuff, and I'm like, I like half the battle is just me turning into things that are probably going to get me killed, and like that's
Mhm.
the one thing I didn't like. But uh, I think it brought the job system into that world pretty good.
My main problem with it was just the things that you couldn't see that were not really explicitly stated to you. Like, I know you were having trouble with that, like, super long delay after the bar was, like, the ATB bar was filled. And I was like, okay, so some things have a delay. It's not like you're told that. It's not like you have any indication of that. Oh, you have a ton of strength on this garment grid, but for some reason it's not doing what you thought it would. Just like there were hidden stats or mechanics that weren't as simple as, oh, I increased my strength by 4 points and now I'm hitting this much higher on average. And like, I don't know, there were just some weird things that weren't explained to me, and I just really hated the mini games in the game. But yeah,
Yeah, Final Fantasy X-2 Blitzball we don't talk about.
we don't
No.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or get 100% to get the proper ending and doing all those stupid
Oh my
Yeah.
god, the
Yeah.
100%
areas
thing.
and all that
Ugh.
bollocks.
It was just a way to turn out strategy guides, in my opinion. Conspiracy
Yeah.
hat on.
And you know what hurts me the most?
What hurts you, man?
10-2, it hurt Machen's legacy.
Oh,
Because
bitch.
people end up hating Machen because they're like, oh man, we can't press X on any of his dialogue to get 100%. I hate this guy now. He just drones on and on. I can't skip his dialogue. So it hurt my man Mach, and I won't forgive him for that.
Especially how you had the
Our
option
man mate.
to skip it scenes as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shut up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think 10 definitely had the weirdest quality dips throughout its quote sequels. Like 10 was my favorite, so it's obviously gonna be rated high. 10-2 was like meh, and then we don't like even talk about like the 10-3, whatever you want to call that thing. So like
Whatever you
like
wanna
everything
call it.
else outside of the main game like just severely dips. Like all like the main writers of the main game just kind of like pieced
I
after
think
the
they just had a problem
game.
with
So
sequels because like 13.2 was also just a dip and a complete genre switch from the original game. I don't know what they had about sequels. The only reason I like 13.2 more than 10.2 as a sequel, like barring my 13 bias, is because 13 was still willing to use the soundtrack from the original game, including its original. Like while I was playing through 10.2, I was like, I don't like any of this music, and there's not a single track from the original 10 in this game. I'm like, I can't do it without the music, man.
and it's crazy because like usually in the video game world that sequels usually do much better because they have like they have the character set, they learn their lessons from their first game. So like it's just kind of maybe they like in Square they just use sequels to just toy around with things, see what works. But like why? I don't know.
Just slapping
So
things
weird.
against a wall, seeing
Yeah.
what sticks.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next one? Anyone else have anything to add?
Nah, I don't really have much to add on this one. I don't really want to talk about 10-2, to be honest. I'd just rather not talk about it.
Exactly. My next hot take is just kind of related, unless anybody has anything else.
Go ahead.
But it's like, would you rather have them remake 10 and like do like ignoring 10.2 going off on a new tangent, or would you want 10.3 and continuing down this road? Like, would they remake 10 and like go down a different road with it?
Did the poster of this like give an opinion? Like where do they sit on this?
Oh, where was it? I accidentally closed it, so I lost it. But I think it was related to a couple comments about 10 that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, someone was saying something about 10 being remade, and like it was about the CTB system, or like the wanting to keep it, the ATB, or wanting to keep it active. And then the other one was something about 10.3. So I kind of combined those into one. Like, which ones would you prefer? Or what do you think they'd be doing?
I think if they did do a remake, they probably, I don't see them not including 10-2 already there. Like I don't think they'll just like ignore that it ever happened and like go on a new tangent. As much as I would like them to do that, I don't think they would do that. Because there might, I don't know, there like probably be like some legal issues maybe with all that kind of stuff. They just kind of ignore it. I don't know, but yeah, I don't see them ever kind of.
Titus is how it's pronounced. Oh, there's the hot take.
Oh boy. Yeah, only thing I would say about Final Fantasy X remake in the future, it's inevitable. First of all, Final Fantasy X will get remade someday. Like there's no debate about that. Like it will happen. But for me, I'm not worried because Final Fantasy X, like especially the HD remaster and even the original, for me it's already like it's modern enough that I wouldn't mind. Like when people say if you don't like 7 remake, just play the original, I think that's a bit unfair. Because in this day and age, a PS1 game with no voice acting is primitive. Like compared to Final Fantasy VII remake, the original Final Fantasy VII is just from the Stone Age. Like it's a whole different way to experience a video game. But for 10, because it does have the voice acting and like the models, especially in the HD remaster, most of them look pretty good. Like if say they remake 10 and for whatever reason I don't like it, it's trash, I'm very happy to just go back and play the original and just enjoy it. It's not, I wouldn't be like, oh man, this looks so crap now, or like, I wish this had voice acting. I like the voice actors, but I don't like what they did with the story, etc. It's still there. But for 7, I think that's why it's more important that they do the right thing, because it's not just as easy as I'll just go back and play the OG 7 then, I think, if you're trying to remake it.
Yeah, 2 points on that. One, I was kind of disappointed when I tried out Ever Crisis, because I thought Ever Crisis was going to be like that newer, like shot-for-shot remake, but it skips so much. Like it just has like a little tint of a scene, and then like it just skips a lot.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing. Like the trailers especially made it seem like it was going to be like a shot-for-shot remake.
Yeah, it's a bait and switch again.
Yeah, so that was very disappointing. I would have loved
It starts as a mobile game, and it really feels like a mobile game.
Yeah.
It's tiny progression, and then you buff your stats or whatever. Tiny progression, then you buff your stats. It's like a daily kind of game for like 20 minutes.
No thanks. But also, if they ever do remake 10, I'm hoping that it'd be like so far into the future that like VR or AR is a thing that you can like live it. Like I don't want a remake to be done in this climate sort of thing. It would have to be like I'm gonna put on my goggles, I'm gonna live in the world, and that's how it's gonna be remade.
You really want Lulu right in front of you.
So cool.
I didn't say that.
I think it would work super well, because especially at the start of the game, it's a game where you're very much put into Titus' shoes, as like he's basically a stranger to this new world he's appeared in. He's trying to figure everything out. So you being in that position of like you step into Spira, it wouldn't be fun like at the end of the Dreams Anakin sequence when you're being sucked in by Sin, but after that, I think I think afterwards you'd be okay.
I think I could take if that happened.
Okay.
Blitzball in VR, just tackling people.
Erica, have you given us a hot take yet? I think Erica can give us one.
These are kind of, I can mush them together. It says Final Fantasy IX isn't as great of a game as people make it out to be, especially being between 8 and 10, which were both significantly better in my opinion. And then the other one
Wipe
is very
that grin
similar.
off your face, Josh.
Saying Final Fantasy
laughing.
IX is the most Final Fantasy IX is the most overhyped one. For me, it's just basic and boring. Vivi is the only positive aspect in this game. I'm pretty sure that these are both Josh's
From Josh.
fault.
Yeah, so the real question is, Josh, why did you go to all of this effort just to...
Look, I am a man of the people. It's not my fault that all the people think the same as me. It is what it is. So, basic and boring, especially basic, is how I would describe my opinion of a lot of the things in Final Fantasy IX. It feels so uninteresting to me. And that's one of the things that I just can't get past. Is like so much of the dialogue to me feels basic. So many of the story beats just feel basic. Like I can't do it. I agree with this person. I agree with this hot take.
I will say, so I played 8 to 9 back to back. I was after I joined the stream, and I was like, wow, I should probably play these games. So I started off with 8 and planned to play 9 after that. The one gripe I have with 8 was that I felt punished for using my magic, because it was junctioned.
Yeah,
So
the
if I
junction
used
system.
it, I would be weaker, which didn't for like I feel like I just had to attack everything. So when I got to 9, it was fine. It was refreshing to like do the classical type of like I'm gonna use a magic spell and I'm gonna do like I had a little bit more to strategize with magic in 9. So
That's
that was
fair.
refreshing. But everything
fair.
else though, I can agree that was a little bit more basic and boring. And I think like I feel like 9 was probably um, they wanted to get the roots of the game gameplay wise, but just try it in a more fantastical setting. Um, and they didn't want to like toy around with the combat too much because maybe that would have been too much tweaking or something. So yeah, that was the only like highlight of playing 9 was like, okay, now I can actually like use magic and not feel bad about it. So that was nice.
I'm gonna say something that I'm sure that Josh is gonna rub in my face for like ever, but I agree with him that the game is basic.
Mhm.
And I still maintain that it's my favorite game. It's like my favorite Final Fantasy game. But for me, and I feel like for a lot of people that still hold on to this game as like one of their favorites, is like it was never gonna be about like the difficulty or the way you like its replayability and
Yeah.
how you like do the combat system or any of that. It's nothing about the complexity of the game. I think it's purely based on like I think like the humor and the fantasy of it and like the overarching story. Like I think it also came out at a good time where, a lot of us were a little younger. I think like the simplicity of it and like the fun humor that's like brought into the story like pulls you in emotionally and like it's just like fun and simple in that way.
The
And
music
I
was
think that's
also a
why
bop.
people hold it so high on their list of like favorites for Final Fantasy. Like it serves that purpose of being like fun, simple, and like kind of like humorous, and the plot is like it's cute and nice, and you really cling to the characters that they fleshed out.
Yeah. And
Nothing
It's
about
very
the game
theatrical.
is complex.
the thing is, when you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
find
yeah.
it funny and you don't find most of the characters cute
Well,
and you don't find
you not finding it funny is
well,
not my problem,
okay,
Josh.
okay. But I'm just saying, when you don't find those things there, what's left in the game for you? Nothing.
So I want to hear from both Laura and Psych here because they're both massive fans of 8. Well, I know Laura loves 9, and I think Psych also Psych, you're a fan of 9 too, right?
I think Sykes just stepped away to go to the little boys' room.
Oh boy. Okay, so let's go with Laura first. So Laura, what do you say to all of this as a fan of both games?
I say you're all talking rubbish. They're both ace. They're both. I wouldn't change a thing about either of them. I personally do not want a remake of 9 or 8, because
Or 8.
Wow.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
Whoa.
That's a hot take.
That is a hot take.
it would ruin it for me. It really would, because I love 8 in all what it is. Like, I don't want it voice acted because I have the voices of the characters in my head already.
Oh, so they're all from Yorkshire. That's great.
Sure are.
The whole cast of 8. That's great.
Comes from Doncaster. Yeah, it is. But I do, on a personal level, I think it would detract from the game for me if it was remade in the way that 7's been remade and it was fully voice acted and everything, because it wouldn't be 8 anymore for me. Similar, Jay, I suppose, to you, how the OG 7 is still your favourite and that the remake's not on the same level because you've not got that same affinity with it. I don't know, it's just me. I'd hate for them both to be remade. I love them exactly as they are.
I think I kind of agree with you about the like the voices in my head for them. I've fleshed them out so well that I don't know. Maybe it would be jarring to see like them voice acted. I don't know that I would hate it yet. I would still want to see. I think I'd still want to see it like remade, but you're right that it would be jarring, and I'm not prepared for how I'm gonna emotionally react to it, because it's just, again, it's like what I hold special in my heart about this game is like the nostalgia of playing it when I was a kid. So if that's all I'm holding on to, I don't know that I'm convinced that like a new current version is going to hit the same.
Really liked the Memoria project. I think they did a wonderful job on it, but for me, the voices weren't right, because they weren't the voices in my head that I'd given to the characters, and it just didn't sit right with me. But I'm a bit of a purist in like just sort of going off on a tangent a little bit. Like the Disney films, I can't stand any of the Disney remakes.
They're awful.
Like
Yeah, they're
Can you
shit.
stand the Kingdom Hearts remakes
just
though?
leave them as they are. You don't need to make everything live action and shit these days. Just the old Disney films like Snow White back from whenever it was, the 40s. It's gorgeous. You don't need to modernize things for the sake of modernizing them. And just going back to the point, I think a remake of 8 and 9 aren't needed because they don't need modernizing. But I don't think a remake of 10 is needed because
I
it
agree
doesn't
with that.
need anything.
Yeah.
I agree with Laura there.
Yeah, because it looks modern as it is, unless you go down the remake route of what Rel suggested, where it's augmented reality or virtual reality, and you are teedy tidy Titus, you get to drop the sword and all that shit. But the rest of it, there's no need. Just put all your artistic talents and everything into creating 17 that is, I don't know how they would do it. It was some sort of hybrid between the turn-based systems that those of us in our almost 40s love, and the action games that those of us under 40 love. It's that's my hot takes. I will step back now.
Hey, Bert,
Is Psych back yet?
yeah, I was gonna say, can you repeat it for him?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the take was basically, again, it's just talk about how like Final Fantasy 9 is overrated, and especially like compared to 8, which was a far superior game and that kind of thing. You're a fan of both 9, well, you're a big fan of 8 obviously, but you're a fan of 9 too. So how do you view the both games like against each other, and how do you feel about it?
Oh, okay. I thought the question was about having them remade. Yeah,
we kind of segued. You can talk about that too
okay.
if you want, but yeah.
Well, I think 8 and 9 are very different from each other, and they're a bit harder to compare than I think what most people love to compare 8 with, which is 7. I think they're very different, like I said, but I will say this. I heard what Rel was saying, that some of the elements of 9 sometimes kind of fall flat, and I think it's true. And recently I started replaying 9, and I think a lot of my nostalgia was holding it up more than I think it actually is, if that makes sense. Because some of the things just didn't connect with me as much as I remember them connecting with me. But it doesn't mean I don't love 9. I mean, I still love 9 as a game. Obviously, I am completely biased. I would say 8 is better than 9.
I definitely think that 8 has had a bit of a renaissance. Like, I feel like there was a time when 8 was literally known as like the kind of
Black sheep.
The black sheep, like the kind of the middle child of like between 7 and 9, and like 9 was the darling and 7 was the goat, and 8 was this like weird game in the middle. But like, I feel like over the years, like I feel like that narrative shift. I hear way less people shitting on 8 than I did before.
Even in the hot takes, man, there's like 3 or 4 saying Final Fantasy 8 remake. I mean, that just shows that the love for the game has flourished more nowadays, which I think is well deserved, obviously. And for the sake of remakes, I kind of disagree. I think 8 is probably one which, with what I forgot who was saying that it shouldn't have a remake.
Laura.
I would love to see a remake of 8, and I think it would work probably in the sort of golden era we're speaking of, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think it would be one of the ones that would hit the best, because 8's story, I would admit as well, is a bit convoluted sometimes, that I think alterations to it wouldn't be as impactful to the community as 7's are being right now. And I think 8 holds out to its own in the sense that there's essentially the past, present, and future in Ultimecia, Adele, and Edea, and so it would really, really, really work in a part series.
Yeah. I agree. If they could flesh out one of my major gripes about 8 was like hyping up the villains, especially fuck you, Necron. Wait,
what? That's not.
Sorry. I just have harbor against Necron. But 8, 8, like we just kind of like were introduced to these villains, and they were just like, hey, we're bad now. I mean, they kind of tied in everything, but it took me like a little bit to understand what the villains or motives and stuff. But if they use this like a remake to flesh out a little bit more of the story, I think that would really help out and be successful.
I did think Squall had a very interesting take on a protagonist who, yeah, he's the good guy who's like gonna do the right thing. He's the leader. People are putting him in charge or whatever. But it's like he doesn't like actively step up to that role in any way. It's just like, why am I the leader? And people are like, why don't you ever talk that much? Like, why don't you express how much you care about your comrades? And the thing is, like, he explicitly has like a line that's like, I care as much as everybody else does. I just don't think there's a reason to like always be positive or always speak out against it. And like I've had that in my life where I'm just like, yeah, there are bad things that are going to happen, and we don't have to always be cheerleader squad. Let's go get it, boys. Let's go. It's like sometimes you can care without having to be like pack bonding with all your friends kind of thing. Like I just really like his take on the character in
Yeah.
relation to like all the other protagonists.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I would say that if they remake 8, I think Squall suffers a little bit from the age of the game and the format. Like, I think a lot of the nuance in his character can be lost just because most of the way you characterize him is just by reading his lines off the screen.
Yeah.
And so I think if you were
Oh, yeah.
you were a bit more able to see his like facial expressions, the way he reacts to things,
Yeah.
like what he feels. I think that would help us kind of bond with him better. And I think he could definitely be one of the better, like even better. If you already love him, he could be an even better protagonist, I think, in
Yeah.
a remake.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I think an 8 remake would be excellent.
And we probably get the most benefit from a remake in terms of helping it be fleshed out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
And
a
the
lot
game-
of things are missed.
And the art direction is so beautiful in that game. Like, I imagine a city like, I don't know, Estar or something. Like, that place, like in a remake, would just absolutely phenomenal.
I do admit though that Laguna and Irvine might change my opinion.
Ben Starr said he wants to voice Laguna, so
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh.
Good lord.
But yeah, I was gonna say, like, I totally agree with you, Burke, about like Squall being a protagonist that would really benefit from a remake, because yeah, I feel like I really struggle. I really didn't like him as a protagonist, but I think a lot of it over the years, like I think I understood that. I was like, I think it's because, like, well, I feel like there were some points about the translation that were not that great, but also in the dialogue, but also just I think a lot of his actions speak more than his words, and it's just it's far tougher for Squall to like be endeared as a character where you can kind of understand motives that way, since it's just, you know, dialogue.
There's a little bit of him in Dissidia where he's voice acted, and his point was, yeah, I don't have to have BFFs near me all the time, but that doesn't mean that I don't like having friends. It's just I don't like being like vocal about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the potential is definitely there. I feel like that's got to be the move. Like, once 7 remake is complete, the trilogy is all done, I feel like surely they've got to come together and start working on 8 remake.
I don't know if they'd go further back and maybe do 5 or 6.
to me that feels like if my gut reaction is that's probably too risky. I think anything pre-7, even 6, as great as it is one of my favorites. But I feel like the SNES era, I feel like they must think that these games are a bit like it gets riskier and riskier the further back you go. I think 8 or 9's a safer bet than 6.
And I think that Square Enix also really like the sprites because the sprites were in 15 in the menu. They were in 16.
Yeah.
And they were in another one, weren't they, where they used the sprites in, or was it just 15 and 16? I think it was just 15 and 16 actually.
Yeah.
It's so hard to guess what they're going to do next because there's so many factors that could happen. Like affect what they want to do. Like, do they have the original content? Do they have the like the all the market or not the market, all the story details that they had back in the day that they wanted to tell? Like, are there people still around that were worked on the original game that can help? There's so many different factors that can affect whether or not they choose to do 8 or 6 or something like that. It's so hard to tell. It's basically impossible to decide see what they do next.
Yeah, I'm just sad they didn't do the 3DS remakes for 5 and 6. I always hear like 3 and 4 were pretty good, especially 4, like the 4 3DS remake thing they did. I always hear was pretty good, and I think that would have been like a nice kind of middle point, like for 5 and 6, especially 5. I would have loved to have seen 5 be available, but yeah, I think nowadays they're going for more like the full-blooded, like pure remake. I still believe that the 9 remake's not going to be a 7 style one. I still feel like that's going to be some kind of Crisis Core reunion level. Like they're going to overhaul the visuals, but the skeleton will remain the same, and maybe gameplay will be a little bit faster, a bit sweet. And I think that's exactly what it needs. Like, so I'm looking forward to 9 remake as well. It gets announced.
No, it's just like a weird, like I don't know if we'll even like have remakes in the future for say. Like we're in this weird era that like we don't really have too many limitations anymore. And like we're just kind of like catching up from the past where we did have limitations, and then we're like, okay, now we just want to see what we want to do. So hopefully it's like just a matter of time where they kind of just get through everything, and like now, like not everything's coded for one particular system and stuff like that. So hopefully it's just a matter of time for these things.
Yeah, and I still think that ultimately the whole like Creative Business Unit 3 taking over the mainline series, making the next game. In my mind, I still think the way forward, if I was CEO and they're like, well, what do you want to do with the upcoming kind of stuff? I'd be like, okay, just let Creative Business Unit 3 continue on. Let them make 17. I'm sure they've learned a whole bunch of stuff after they made their first kind of single player debut. It was by no means a flop. It was a good debut. It had its issues, as we've discussed, but I think they did a good job for a debut effort. And then just let the old heads, let the kind of Kitase, Nomura, all these guys, let them handle the OG games because they were there for them.
Yeah.
And just have one team focusing on remakes and one team focusing on pushing the series forward, and just see where you go. Is there anyone else that wants to present a hot take?
Sure, I'll go. All right, so I'll do 2 of them because one of them isn't worth a discussion, but I just want to bring it up. So, Val says, it's pronounced Titus. End of discussion. Wrong. It's Titus.
It's what?
Titus. Yeah. So, now that we've got that out there, now that that's taken care of.
No. Hold on. We gotta rewind for a second. No. You said Titus?
Yeah.
Is it not Titus?
Yeah, it's Titus.
I'm on board.
Okay, there we go.
This is like the variations of Dango 8.
It's not Titus. It's not Titus. It's actually a secret. It's a super special secret other thing.
Yeah, it's actually a special handshake. So
it's tittious.
Anyway,
it's tittious.
The one that I actually want to use for mine is Final Fantasy
name is
12.
Short for Ted. Did you know?
That is?
Okay. Final Fantasy 12 is the most replayable game in the series. Now, the hot take here is that I don't agree with this. It's 10.
Okay.
It's 10. 10 is so replayable. I grasp it now. After replaying 10 this year for the challenge run I did and watching, like, I think you did 2 challenge runs this year, Burr? Was it auto attack? something
Yeah,
else.
I did the mini. Yeah, I did a mini one. I did the Omega Ruins mini
Yeah,
one.
it was the
and then
Omega Ruins one.
auto challenge.
So
Yeah.
after doing my own and watching both of those, I just there's so much depth to what you can do with Final Fantasy X and how much you can milk with just pushing what you can do with the combat system in that game. And it just doesn't get old. The more you try to do with it, the more you discover of just little ways you can use this ability here, this ability there, this item here to get through certain encounters in ways that you really, really probably shouldn't be able to, but you just can because the game's so good. It just feels so refined. And the more you try to do with it, the better it feels. And like 12 is great. And there's a lot of things you can do with 12, but I don't get that same feeling that I do with 10 in like trying to push 10 and like doing a no sphere grid or doing like whatever challenge.
Yeah, I feel like 10 is like still relatively simple in terms of combat. Like it has the elements and it has defense and offense and but like there's so many levers you can pull still. Like there's CTB, there's just the different stats that you have and the enemy counters and stuff like that. That yeah, it's like surprisingly customizable. That you can kind of like there's different mods. Like we had the P Birdman mod that made it a lot of fun. Yeah, the attack only. There's randomizer, all this stuff that Burke's doing. It's like at first glance you wouldn't expect it that to have this much depth, but it's like an iceberg where it's just
It
like
is an iceberg.
here's a game that you play and then like the gigantic mechanics under the belt that you can tweak.
Also, as far as story goes and just getting more out of a second playthrough, Final Fantasy X is like one of the kings of that. Very few video games in general can stack up in just how much you can glean from a second, third, fourth, fifth playthrough of 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not going to find much resistance from me on this one. Like, obviously, yeah, I agree. I mean, to offer my own perspective, obviously, on this, I think I caught onto this before I ever had a channel, basically, because I think I literally asked myself the question of how do I replay this game? Like, I think I was like 13, 14, and I completed it like properly for the first time, and I was just like, okay, so I want to play this game again. Like, I want to play more of this game. Why would I do that? Like, what's the motivation here? And then it's like, then the whole iceberg thing comes into it, where like I started doing some research, and like you go onto like GameFAQs, and there's like forums from 2002, 2003, where there's people just like having really in-depth discussions about this challenge, that challenge, and literally a lot of the challenge FAQs that you see, like No Sphere Grid Dark Aeon FAQ was written in 2002, right? So people were already thinking about how to play the game in these different ways within a year of its release, before the age of basically like the internet. 2002 was still so early on in like the proliferation of the internet that like there was just people knew there was something about the game, and if anything, it's a bit of a shame that like so much of it was kind of lost in the early days. Like so many people just don't know. Like they just sound like these kind of silly acronyms. Like you go onto the things and you see like NSG, NS, NC, NO, NE, NNE, NBB, and it's just like, yeah, this just sounds like some stupid nerdy, like like overkill silly challenge thing. But the amount of variations that you can have and these acronyms, when you actually see how they manifest in the game, it's fascinating, and like it just leads to so many different ways to play the game, and it really does, it genuinely never gets old, because it's a game that you can play it 50 times without playing it the same way twice. It's really, and there's very few games like it in that sense. Like so yeah, I mean, I agree, and obviously the game having such a beautiful story, great locations, great soundtrack, all of that stuff, it really does help. So replayability, I also think 10's got to be one of, if not the best.
If I can add something, it's that what we should keep in mind while we're all saying this, and I think most people would agree with what you have just said, Burke, is that Final Fantasy X is a linear game. It's a one-way road, and it still manages this. it still manages to give this experience to people that make them want to replay it. So it's definitely doing something right. It's definitely a good formula, and it's definitely not an excuse to say this game is linear, therefore it's bad, or this game is bad because it's linear. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, it's always. I think there was a very good YouTube video like done years ago. I think it's like Game Design Doc, some of that. It's basically about like linearity in Final Fantasy X versus 13, and why so many people complained about 13's. Like they used the linearity as a reason for the game being bad versus, well, why wasn't it a problem for 10? And obviously that's a very like in-depth discussion in and of itself. But I don't think obviously 10 is a very clear proof that the linearity itself is not a problem. There's just too many all-time great games that are very linear. But for me, it's not even discussion. Like, if you associate linearity with a game being bad, then I fundamentally disagree with you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, MGS3. You guys ever played that game? It's like literally just a bunch of jungle corridors. It's one of the greatest games ever. Like, there's no freaking way. Like, The Last of Us, very, very linear game. Uncharted 2, very linear game. Like, for me, it's not a discussion, but obviously a game can suffer from it too, but I don't think it's the linearity itself that's the issue.
No.
Is there anyone left who hasn't shared a hot take? Erica, have you?
I did.
You did? I think
I have
Selena.
one actually.
Okay, let's make
wanted
this
to get.
let's make this the last one because we're pushing like 3 hours at this point.
Yeah. This might be a good one to end on actually, because I was so curious about it. So it was that Final Fantasy 15 is the least Final Fantasy of the franchise. And I was so curious. I feel like I have to stew on it a little bit more, because then I got to wondering about, like, okay, well then what does everybody classify as, like, the thing that makes Final Fantasy Final Fantasy? Any thoughts for everyone? Because, like, I wasn't even sure if I agreed that Final Fantasy 15 was the least Final Fantasy of them all. But they make a good point. Sorry?
I think it probably was. Honestly,
Even
I think
what about 2?
It was a bad Final Fantasy.
Oh, okay.
There's a hot take about
Fantasy.
there's a hot take about 2 here. But there was a thing about Final Fantasy 15.
Kind of hard to say that.
There was one thing about Final Fantasy 15 that felt wrong for me, and that was the fact that Noctis is like whatever chosen one or whatever. But then we had like the Arden DLC, which made me start thinking most of their Final Fantasies were going against some kind of god, right? But in Final Fantasy 15, we are working with the gods. Despite in Arden's Tale or whatever, him explicitly seeing how bad all these prophecies and how bad Bahamut is, how bad it is that he is forced into this role by the gods or whatever for all of this fate. And it also was in episode Ignis, where it's like, Ignis is actually a very good and reliable person. The only thing that he lacks in comparison to Noctis is that he's not born the chosen one. Like, he is loyal, he's willing, he's a good fighter, he is willing to go the mile for the sake of the people he cares about. Like, he would make a great protagonist, but unfortunately Noctis is the chosen one. But in Arden, it's just like, he wanted to be a good person, but unfortunately he has to wait for the chosen one. Like, he is pushing you along in the game like, hurry up and get to your destiny already. It feels like a drag to be Noctis, and I don't, like, it gave me a bad feeling in my mouth, which is just like, why are we going along with this horrible plan of the gods that they have set up or whatever, that it's destiny, when most Final Fantasies, we're doing the exact opposite. We're going against the gods in some way, or some kind of higher power that decided they knew what was right for the world 1,000,000 years ago. Like 9, they had this big plan with Terra or whatever. 13, they had the big plan with Cocoon. And even in 16, we had this big plan with, like, Valistea or whatever. Like, that's what felt wrong, personally, in 15, among other things. But that's what felt wrong in terms of the story.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid take. I can't really argue with that. It's one, honestly, I didn't really think about too much myself, but episode Arden puts a lot of that into perspective. But yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that.
I mean, in terms of, like, there's no... Are there Muggles in 15?
Are there?
I don't
Can't-
remember.
I
There's a Moogle plush,
Oh,
I think.
yeah. Like what? I guess it's hard to define what makes a Final Fantasy Final Fantasy. Like there's the summons, like there's Moogles and Chocobos, which 15 has summons and Chocobos. Yeah, crazy hairdos. They got
Cup
there's
noodles.
some semblance of magic in there.
But that's why Yaz's point. That's why
Yeah.
Yaz's point to me is so powerful, because again,
Yeah.
if you're asking me what is a Final Fantasy, oftentimes it is basically what Yaz talked about, like that kind of narrative. And well, 16 does have that type of narrative, and that's why I would always defend it in terms of like its story being a pretty Final Fantasy story when it's all said and done. Like the conversations that Clive has against the antagonistic figure in the game, all of that is so classic Final Fantasy. So like you hear that at the end of every Final Fantasy game pretty much. But for 15, I think already we have what Yaz said. Let's add to it on top. It was the gameplay was yet again a big departure. It looked nothing like 13. It looked nothing like anything we'd experienced before. The magic was crap.
Trash.
And nothing like any Final Fantasy before. Already the setting was a little bit less fantasy. Obviously they had they literally have like a nice luxury car to roam around in. There was a bit more kind of real world elements to it. That's not necessarily doesn't immediately make it not a Final Fantasy,
a bad
but
thing, but
yeah, but for that game, like on top of all of the other stuff, like it wasn't. I don't think it was as strong. So yeah, I think for me the least Final Fantasy is still 15. I think.
Yeah, because even like
That sounds right.
13 and 12, right? Because like everyone talks about like 10's the last turn-based game, but like 12, you can move your characters around, but you still have your fill-up bars.
Yeah.
Where like you wait for your action and you do it. Like 13, you still
stop
have your
time.
little bars that fill up, and then you do your action. Like it's still like
Menu based?
a evolution of the ATB. But then 15 was the first game that really just said, fuck this. Like, no. We're going completely like action combat. Yeah. And I think that's really where like one of the places where it comes from. Like, yeah, what Yaz said, yes, 100%. Like, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, but you're completely right. Like, that's so true about the game. And yeah, the combat is just it was the first game where they really just went away from what they had done in the past completely. Where it wasn't just a variation of what had been done in the past, where it wasn't an evolution of what had been done in the past. It was something completely different.
Yeah, you kind of make a good point about the fact that 15 makes you realize that, like, I feel like Final Fantasy in general makes it very easy to define, like, good and bad, or, like, you know, opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of, like, the plot of the story.
And then you play 14.
We don't talk about 14 here.
No,
I think if you're asking me like which are the least Final Fantasies, I think the three that still spring to mind are probably 15 at the top. Then I would say 16 and 12. 12 I would say, okay, Gambit system is enough of a departure from what came before it. But also I think the way they handle the cast and like the story, I still feel like it didn't have enough of a central like focal point in terms of the party. To me, it still didn't give me enough of that, and I feel like Final Fantasy, it does tend to be very like centered on one particular character and their kind of tale. And I feel like 12 lacked that a bit. But it wasn't one of those where necessarily just because it wasn't as Final Fantasy made it like a bad game. I'm a big fan of 12, but so
Yeah,
basically it leads me to a bigger point of if we're wondering what is a Final Fantasy game, based on what I think, well, the three games I've listed that are the least Final Fantasy, funnily enough, happen to be all games after Final Fantasy X. So what does that say about, is there such thing as a Final Fantasy game? Well, maybe there is, because I didn't really think about any game before 12. And so clearly what they were doing before that, those elements, I guess, are probably part of what makes a Final Fantasy game a Final Fantasy game. But that's how I see it.
Yeah, even comparing it visually. You have stuff like Final Fantasy 7 and 8 who strayed away from the high fantasy setting that that the previous games were giving, and still they managed to keep the core of the game and make it feel like a Final Fantasy. So
Exactly.
like Yas was perfectly saying, essentially, it's not just the visual aspect of 15 that made it so lacking in that term.
Yeah, I think Yas kind of, for me, put the nail in the coffin. Like 15, I find it at this stage hard to argue that 15 is the least Final Fantasy one of the bunch.
It's what I'm
Does
here
anyone
for.
want to counter that point? Does anyone think there's a Final Fantasy that's less Final Fantasy than 15?
No.
No.
Yeah, I think we have a winner.
Yep,
No.
that's it.
GG.
Let's trash the game, guys.
Okay. Can I throw in one more hot take?
Okay, go on.
No.
Final Fantasy 16 didn't even have the best soundtrack this year. It was Sea of Stars.
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
haven't seen
I-
it.
But I'm the only
what
one
does
who's
Real say?
played this game
Yeah.
in here,
Wait,
but I just have to throw it out there.
The only
Final
opinion,
Fantasy
so the
16,
only
but
opinion that matters.
It wasn't even the best.
Josh is just in here to like give his like aggressive opinions and to like leave.
Yeah, fight me in the comments. That's it. Fight me in the comments. I say this every podcast. Get in the comments. Start throwing down fingers on the keyboard. Let's go. Let's go, me and you.
Come to Canada, Josh. I dare you. Just come to Canada.
I'll only come
My,
to Canada to get maple syrup. That's it.
I think what probably still one of my hottest takes regarding 16, the one I said in my review, is that I still think the soundtrack is a little bit overrated. I thought the soundtrack was good, like it was very good, but like, you know, it won soundtrack of the year, and like this whole like, oh, the soundtrack was amazing, it's one of the best. For me, like, comparing it to other Final Fantasy games where the standard is so high, for me it doesn't crack like the top 5 best soundtracks. Like I think 13's is already better, like easily better than 15. 16 for me. And like many of the Golden Age titles, I still would say their soundtrack was a bit better than 16's. But that doesn't mean 16's was bad, but it was just like, it was really good. But I think it's a bit like, you know, the context behind it and stuff, again, for people who don't know, I'm not like hugely clued up, but I believe Soken went through like cancer treatment and stuff during development
Yes.
and during the making of the sound. Like that stuff's incredible. Like the fact that he still put out such a high quality like body of work. Obviously, I've got massive respect for that. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of taste and how you feel when you hear the music. And in terms of that, like I said, I would say like, I don't know, 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 soundtrack, but not like, oh yeah, it was like 9.5. It was a 10 out of 10, amazing, brilliant.
Okay, so there's also one more, like, another thing, aspect of it. Like, okay, he was undergoing cancer treatment. So for a lot of that, he was in the hospital in the middle of COVID. He couldn't, like, have visitors for a period in there, and they were basically doing this all over, like, not in person. Like, him and the other people working on the music. I know for one particular song in Final Fantasy 14, it's called To the Edge, and it's widely regarded as one of the best songs in the game. He was, writing that from a hospital bed with no visitors, no people like in person contact.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why like it's like I'm 100% like looking forward to him working on 17 and just hearing more from him. But yeah, like, because obviously the award happened and all that kind of stuff. Like, I still think it's a little bit overrated personally. Okay, so have we wrapped up the hot take segment as well?
I reckon it's run its course.
Unless you
Wait,
have some Final
this
Fantasy
one
II
argument,
I think so.
Josh, is that Hi-Fi Rush is better.
Okay. I haven't played it. I haven't heard the music.
It's
But-
also a game based off music, so it's hard to.
I don't know. I'd have to compare it to what Sea of Stars put out, because that game just kind of floored me with the music, floored me with the soundtrack. It was like, damn, this is so good.
Put your favorite songs in,
Nice.
and we'll all listen to it and get back to you on that.
Yes.
Okay, so because it's already been 3 hours, it's been over 3 hours at this point. is there anything else you want to talk about, or should we start to wrap things up? Like, obviously, we said 7 Rebirth. I think maybe quickly for like 5-10 minutes, let's just have a quick. What are we thinking about Rebirth? Is everyone that's able to get it? Are you guys all picking it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna play
How are
it.
you feeling about
Definitely.
That's it.
Definitely
I'm gonna play it.
Yeah, I'm more hyped about this than I was at 16. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's a better question. Who is more hyped about Rebirth than they were about 16?
Not me.
I am.
Show of hands?
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Josh
Yeah,
is the
too.
only one who
Yeah,
wasn't. I guess
like I said-
that's the 14 experience.
Well,
I'm
it's the
not
14
sure, honestly.
experience, and also just that demo when they dropped that, it went crazy. The hype went crazy.
I think people forget how impactful the trailer of 16 was.
Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
also
actually gonna say I feel like I was more excited for 16 as well. Like
Okay.
even like not having a system, just like on my feelings about both, I feel like I was more excited for 16 because like I think I'm more interested in the new story than I am about.
Yeah, it's the variety
what
of
they
knowing
do.
what's coming versus not knowing what's coming.
Yeah, I think 16 obviously has the advantage. It had already been like 6-7 years since the last entry. Obviously, a lot of people want to know what's next. So, but still, I think for me, easier to say having finished 16 now. But I was on record even like the first trailer. I still wasn't I wasn't blown away by any of the trailers. I wasn't particularly excited by any of them.
Yeah.
But the
that.
7 remake, the Rebirth trailers, they've excited me more than the 16 trailers did. Personally.
Yeah, I didn't have enough information on 16 to get hyped about it, honestly. But then I'm the one who loves spoilers, so, you know.
I think even just like seeing the Devil May Cry type of gameplay kind of maybe not that excited because I think a lot of it was like there's a lot of comments and discussions about like is it just going to be Clive that we're controlling? Because you can see that within the trailers. I mean, it was I don't know. I feel like I kind of got the whole game. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say how I felt beforehand, knowing what I know now. But like I kind of had tempered expectations based off the combat gameplays that they showed. I mean, the icon stuff looked great. But like I think how I feel about the game now is kind of how I felt like I knew I was gonna feel watching the trailer. So I wasn't all too excited about the 16 trailers.
16 was exactly what we expected of it.
Okay, so I think we got to start wrapping things up at this point. We had a good run. Like
Yeah.
no like major technical issues, no like
For now.
extended silences, no outtakes.
Although my Audacity did die.
Let's hope
like,
let's hope the
bit.
recordings.
Hold on.
So-
Yeah, hopefully the recording's held up. But I think let's just say goodbye to the audience. If there's anyone who wants to say anything before we wrap this one up, go ahead.
I'll go. Yeah, thanks for being such an awesome community. Thank you guys for coming today, and we can discuss, and being a great group of friends that we can just talk about Final Fantasy. I mean, we could probably be here for another 3 hours if we wanted to, but
Yeah.
if our lives were letting us do that. But so it's just awesome to be part of this and have you guys here, being a great group of friends and being part of this awesome community. Hope that it stays for another 5, 10, 15 years.
So we're gonna leave Real with the outro, or does anyone else want to add?
Thanks for coming.
I'll
Great.
go next.
Great.
If anybody needs anything translating from my terrible Britishisms, please timestamp it in the comments and I will give you a translation if required.
I have to add them to the book I have started from Laura.
Lauraisms.
Okay, so yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me on this one. I'm glad we could do this. It's been a while, but it was a good time. As always, we will do this again in the future. Maybe after Rebirth, sometime after we've had a chance to play Rebirth and experience it, then we can have a good old chat about how that went and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and hopefully everyone enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having
See
us.
you guys.
Write me in the comments.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Guys.
Bye.